Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 2021 meeting of the Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees. This is our first meeting in the COVID era where we have had members of the executive leadership team in the room. So it's a little different for those of us up here on the dais. It's good to have everybody back and to be here without masks on for the first time in however many months that we've been meeting in person, but with masks. So it's a step in the right direction for us and for the whole campus. So help me start the meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have 6 trustees here present tonight. Trustee Lawson informed us earlier today that she is homesick and will not be joining us for tonight's meeting. We wish her a speedy recovery. I'm going to take just a moment as a prerogative of the chair to talk about the fact that on Monday we recognized at Johnson County Community College our Juneteenth celebration, our inaugural Juneteenth celebration. I understand that today President Biden signed the federal legislation to create a federal holiday on June 19th of each year. And Dr. Bound has reached out to me proactively and indicated he will be working with his team in the college to come back with a recommendation to us as to how we recognize that beginning in June of 2022, which seems like a long way off, but it'll be here before we know it. So I wasn't able to participate Monday night because of a client obligation, but I understand it's going to be or is posted so we can review it on the Johnson County Community College website. So I'd encourage everybody to do that. With that, we're going to move on to our student spotlight, which is Emily Alphen. Dr. Bound?
Absolutely. Well, we'll bring her up on the screen tonight. This, for me, is one of the highlights of each of our meetings, and I am excited tonight to introduce to you Emily Alphen. She and her husband and their 2 kids live in Lenexa. She is a recent graduate of our graphic design program. She has served as an intern in our strategic marketing and communications group. I recognize her most as the mask lady. I hope that's appropriate and okay to say. I met her one of my first days here on campus as I was getting ready for they had to take my picture. And she was around doing things, getting campus set up for our return to campus and masking promotions and so forth. So that's how I first remember meeting her here on campus. But I would love to introduce Emily to you. Emily?
Thank you, Dr. Bound. It's good to be with you all today. Can you hear me okay, first of all?
We can.
Perfect. Well, as you know, my name is Emily Alphen. First and foremost, I would like to personally thank Dr. Bound, the board members, and everyone who played a role in providing such a wonderful commencement. I know it wasn't what any of us wanted, and it wasn't what I dreamt about for so many years, but it was perfect for the circumstances, and I will forever cherish the memory of walking across my garage floor when my name was announced and received my diploma from my husband. It meant the world to me, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. As you might have already guessed, last month I received my AAS in graphic design. My journey to JCCC began more than 15 years ago when I was a young 20-something-year-old putting my husband through school. After creating our own invitation for our wedding, I began a side hustle of creating handmade event and wedding invitations. I pushed Microsoft Word to the limits, and I tried to squeeze as many invites on one sheet of paper as I could to maximize cost and trimming. I spent countless nights tying bows and gluing and making sure the spacing was just right before taking it all to the printer the next day and praying that they wouldn't screw anything up. About a year into this adventure, the invitation business began to go more digital, and my husband and I lacked the financial means to put me through school while he was still earning his degree. After he graduated in 2010, my husband received a job with Garmin as a software engineer, and we moved here to Kansas. Shortly thereafter, we began our family. In August of 2017, the desire to earn my graphic design degree was stronger than ever. I looked to Johnson County Community College for, first and foremost, its affordability. But even more than that, I was drawn to their flexible course options. And with two small children at home, who at the time were 3 and 6, it was important to me that I could spend as much time with them as possible. Thankfully, JCC provided all of that and so much more. I began classes in the fall of 2017. The next 3.5 years proved to be exhausting and overwhelming as I tried to manage being a wife, a mother, and a student all at the same time. This past fall, I was crazy enough to be a co-president of the Graphic Design Club. And in February of 2020, I was hired as a graphic design intern, like Dr. Bound said, with the Marketing and Communications Department. Just 3 short weeks later, the campus and our whole country shut down. And for a moment there, I wasn't sure if I would be able to continue on with my internship, but the department put their trust in me, and for the last 15 months, I was able to do that through the walls of my own home. My husband and I also decided to have our children do school from home this last year. So I had a 1st grader and a 4th grader at home, and my husband at home working, and myself confined to the 4 walls of our home, and it was chaos most of the time, but we made it work. Through the graphic design, as a co-president of the Graphic Design Club, I was tasked with creating the branding and the theme around our annual graphic design showcase. And that was put on in May 13th of this year. Due to the pandemic, unfortunately, we were able to do that in person, which for anybody that is a graphic designer or that has graduated from this program, that is in and of itself a graduation of sorts for us, where we get to come together with alumni of the department, as well as people within the community of the design community, and we get to exchange information with them and help us try to find a job. The showcase was it was well attended, but it obviously wasn't what we had hoped. I'm not really sure how I got through this last year with so much on my plate, except that I had amazing professors and mentors who helped me along the way and who were very understanding of my home situation and just the whole situation that we were all going through, and we were all going through it together, which was an incredible thing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Emily, it's an incredible story of resilience, which we've seen, I think, from thousands of, like 2,500 total people got either their associate's degree, a certificate, or their GED this year. We probably have some questions from some board members if you're willing to answer them. And I'll always start with Trustee Smith Everett if you have a question.
You all need to up your game. Everybody's got to come prepared. I always have questions, but I don't always have to be first. Good evening. Thank you so much for talking to us. I would love to know. There we go. I would love to know what you would tell us, which is policymakers and decision makers, that's important for non-traditional students like yourself.
So going into this degree, I was terrified, to be honest. I thought for sure I was coming into the game too late, and that I would be overlooked. And I would just tell anybody who's in my same shoes that could not be farther from the truth. Anyone who has life experience behind them and who has lived can provide more to and bring more to what JCC offers. And I think that that's been a huge blessing to me and something that I've kind of had to learn along the way. And it's helped me be more confident in what my abilities are.
Thank you.
Trustee Cross?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily, good evening. I'm Lee Cross, a trustee here, and my wife is a graphic designer, just so you know, and has supported my career. And I actually watched my mother and father do something very similar to what you all have done. My question, if I may, is what did your kids think about your graduation?
So it's hard for me to talk about my kids without getting a little emotional, but they have, between the two of them and my husband, they have been my biggest fans the last 3.5 years. My kids always tell me that I'm the best graphic designer, which is so amazing. They're so loving, so forgiving, which has been an incredible thing when I haven't had as much time for them as I maybe would have wanted to. But they loved the party. They loved the graduation. And I think we were all just relieved and so excited to be able to have mom back and to be able to spend time with family, with each other, and not have me, watching the clock and saying, okay, I got to get back home to get this project going.
Well, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Cook, and then Trustee Ingram.
Emily, thanks for your presentation. You've certainly been an example of a very unselfish person. You put your husband and your children ahead of your schedule, and that's a real attribute that deserves lots of recognition, and so I applaud you. But back to you, what's next for you? Next week, next month, next year? What do you want to do when you get big?
When I get back, today I was actually just asked if I would be willing to stay on through the end of August with the marketing and communications department. So I am more than happy to be here with them as long as they'll keep me. And after that, I'm not really sure. Just connecting with my family is probably the biggest thing on my list right now. But I have so loved being able to just have more of a work-life balance, and that's something that's very important to me.
Thank you for sharing.
Chris Gray and Dr. Bound, and take that as a yes. Emily. Nancy.
Emily, the only thing I would tell you is I was talking to my neighbor today who just graduated from high school this year. So his last 1.5 years has been very similar to yours in some ways and not in others.
Yeah.
But as I told him, I said, don't ever let anyone tell you you can't, because you can. You have survived a pandemic, so congratulations from all of us.
Thank you very much.
Emily, I have one last question. I tend to refer to our students here as kids, even though I know our average age is 26 and you were a little bit north of that. But how did you interact with the other students especially during the period of time when you were on campus as a non-traditional student?
Look at that good question.
All right.
So I will tell you, of the 16 of us who graduate, there were 16 of us that participated in the graphic design showcase. That's not to say that's how many graduated, but of those that were graduating, 16 chose to do the showcase. Of those 16, a fourth of them were mothers. And I think that speaks volumes to JCC, what you are able to offer students, and especially non-traditional students. I would jokingly call people that I would tell them I was their mother. usually most often the oldest in the room, and I just soaked it all up. I loved being, I still consider them my peers. Some of my closest friends have gone through the program with me, and I admire them in so many ways, and I learned so much from them.
Well, congratulations. We are proud of you, and we hope you're proud of Johnson County Community College. We're glad you're going to be here a little longer.
Thank you.
That does it for me for now.
All right. Thank
For
you,
later.
Emily. You're more than welcome to stay, but you have family that would probably be more fun than the rest of this meeting.
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much.
The next item on our agenda is our open forum session. That is a period during each regularly scheduled board meeting when members of the public can comment on items of interest to the college. There are no registered speakers for tonight's meeting. As we've moved to back to an in-person setting, we will accept registrants up to 4:45 p.m. the day of the meeting if they want to speak live. As long as we have a Zoom option, we will continue to ask people to register by 5 p.m. the day before if they want to participate in the open forum session by Zoom. If there are any questions about that, we'll anticipate making both of those available at least for some limited period of time. But no speakers for tonight.
Mr. Chair, it
Yes.
doesn't speak to the tonight specifically around addressing the board, public comment, but we've set up overflow space. So when this space fills up, we have overflow space tonight, and as we move forward, we imagine in the collab. So just down the hallway from here, where we have a live feed in there. So we'll continue to work through this change for us in being maneuvering through being both physically present as well as, for now, a virtual presence as well.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Cross.
If I may just briefly comment, thank you for that, Mr. President. I'm sure you all had come up with that before me, but I'm someone who's pushed for that and encouraged that, and I appreciate it, and especially the Zoom. I almost took advantage of the Zoom tonight. Was supposed to be out of town, but that was canceled at the last minute. So I thank you for those measures. I really do.
Okay, we're moving into board reports. The first report is from college lobbyist Dick Carter. Dick, are you available on Zoom?
I'm right here, Mr. Chairman, and the big news this week is the announcement of 3 new regent appointments from the governor's office. The governor's office yesterday announced the appointment of Carl Ice, Cynthia Lane, and Went Winter to replace Ann Murgia, Shane Bangerter, and Helen Van Etten. The three names of the new appointees could be familiar to many of you. Carl Ice is most recently the chairman of the board for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Cynthia Lane has been actively involved in education issues through the governor's office and former school superintendent for KCK. And Went Winter, several decades ago, served in the Kansas Senate as a legislator. So we have 3 new names that have been forwarded by the governor's office. There has been a Senate Confirmation Oversight Committee hearing scheduled for June 28th, where those candidates and likely others that have been appointed will be vetted. If forwarded on to the full Senate for approval, those members, even though it's in the interim, may begin serving immediately, but the Senate will still require full approval when they return in January of 2022. So the question is, will these appointments begin to establish some level of, and I don't know what the right descriptor is, normalcy, stability at the Board of Regents, and will they be confirmed? I think that's the big question. A lot of the governor's appointees to various boards this past session have come under intense scrutiny from legislative leadership in the Senate. So that'll be the next thing that we're following, is to see exactly what the process looks like for those Board of Regents appointees as they begin their process of being confirmed. State budget and higher education budget submission, I'm going to kind of lump those two things together. State revenues continue to be exceed expectations, much more so in May than previously expected. The Kansas Association of Community College Trustees submitted its budget request to the Board of Regents on June 1. There is a breakdown of that budget request in the report, and I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions about that if there are any. The board did not include the narrative in its submission when it sent the numbers to the budget division. And so an additional piece was approved today at the Board of Regents meeting that it contains a little bit more of a description about what each one of those budget items is. That is traditional practice. We're not exactly sure why the narrative was not included. The maintenance of effort issue that we talked about towards the end of the session could come into play. The Board of Regents is only asking for half of the amount, and that's the same amount in the current budget year. No waiver has been granted thus far at the federal level, and that could come with some problems if that is not granted at the federal level. That means more money will be needed to be appropriated, not only to catch up for the current budget year, but for the future budget year that's going to be discussed next session. Also don't forget that's just one-time money. I guess you could call it two-time money, but it's not a sustaining source for revenue. Even at today's Board of Regents meeting, discussions related to budget allocations, and when I use the word allocation, that gets confusing because when the state talks about allocations, they take money away. Here I'm talking about putting money into certain accounts or certain institutions. There was discussion at the board level about how to spend some of that maintenance of effort money at the community college, Washburn and Independent College level, or at technical college level. Keep in mind, they only coordinate and they don't have that financial oversight, so to speak, at the community college level. Lots of specific appropriating today. What the board actually ended up doing, they offered 5 options, and it was a spreadsheet that just sort of came, I guess overnight it was developed. It wasn't published. There was a spreadsheet that would allocate 80% of the $5 million of the maintenance of effort money to close the gap and 20% to be distributed based on FTE. Legislative intent was discussed all along. It was clearly to be 100% distributed based on FTE. One regent was heard to say, we'll play a game of chicken with the legislature. That's probably not something that I would say if I was testifying before a committee. So clearly we still continue to have issues at the board level. So we'll see what ultimately happens when various legislators start hearing about that and when the Legislative Budget Committee meets later this summer. With regard to College Promise, significant efforts continue at the institutional level. Specifically, is full speed ahead at Johnson County Community College. There's still questions as to whether draft agreements will be approved by the Board of Regents, and I think that that'll play into the overall success of the program. Another webinar, I think this is the 4th or 5th, was held today. It was less than 15 minutes long. It's a one-way communication from the board office. There's no dialogue, and there was no mention of the work group that was pledged just hours before in the Board of Regents meeting this morning. So that kind of gives us an idea of where things are at with College Promise. I can tell you that I'm aware that there are students across the state asking for applications, wanting to take advantage of that program, and we're doing everything we can at JCCC to make sure that we're part of the oil for that machine to keep it moving forward. Redistricting is going to be very interesting. It sounds like Johnson County will pick up several new House seats and possibly a Senate seat. Currently, Johnson County has 9 Senate seats and 25 House seats. That makes up about 20% of the state legislature. If what we're hearing is accurate, and I think we'll know more specifics as the census numbers continue to flow through and that discussion begins, but we're hearing that Johnson County could pick up 1 Senate seat and 3 House seats. That would put the representation just from the Johnson County delegation alone at 23% of the state legislature. Mr. Chair, that kind of brings us up to speed on things that are happening now that the session has come to a formal close. We've not heard yet the list of interim committee topics. That's something we'll be seeing hopefully in the near future when the Legislative Coordinating Council gets together to decide what interim topics will be discussed, heard, and vetted this summer for a report to the legislature in January of 22. I think I would stop there and attempt to answer any questions if there are.
Can I just confirm my basic understanding? When you talk about maintenance of effort, the federal government in its various COVID-related relief packages has required states to spend the same amount of money as in the past on things like higher education to maintain their effort in order to be eligible for those additional federal funds. Is that roughly accurate?
That is accurate.
So basically, we have asked, the Kansas legislature has not funded that fully and has asked for a federal waiver and ability to spend less than the maintenance of effort amount would require.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Trustee Cross?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carter, good evening. I have, I think, some experience directly and indirectly with the three appointed to the Board of Regents. I'm not sure I know the woman from KCK, but I knew Carl Ice. I've worked indirectly with him. And then Winter, I grew up with him in our church and with his children in Lawrence. He's a Republican, isn't he?
He is.
And do we think that there'll be opposition to these three come January?
The various appointees to different boards and commissions that the governor makes when those appointments expire, when prior appointments expire, have all been met with significant pushback. We'll see exactly what happens. As you know, or maybe as folks don't know, and it's been a while since I've dealt with what the distribution of folks at the Board of Regents level looks like. You can have no more partisan appointees than one more greater than the half of who the party in power is. So that means of the 9 regents, 5 could be Democrats, 4 would need to be Republicans. There's also a breakdown of geographic districts based on state universities. So there's a whole host of things that go into how people are chosen and who is eligible to serve. Then you deal with the whole issue of confirmation.
But these three, I mean, these are highly competent and qualified people, and I've been on both sides of Carl Ice, and his reputation is sound. So I don't understand how could there be any opposition to these three? And I don't
we happen to have a big building on campus that bears the name of his corporation. Right. So no, you're absolutely right. I don't know. They are solid candidates. I think we'll just have to wait and see. We just learned of them yesterday. Now we sort of put our ear to the ground and see what the undercurrent sounds like as people begin to form their opinions. I would say that on the Confirmation Oversight Committee, we've got the vice chair is Dinah Sykes, and Senator Pat Petty, who captures a small amount of Johnson County, is on the Confirmation Oversight Committee. It's chaired by Senator Larry Alley, who was just made permanent majority leader. Senator Rick Billinger from Western Kansas, Senator Ty Masterson, President of the Senate, and Vice President Rick Wilborn. So essentially, it's a lot of the Senate leadership that serves on that Confirmation Oversight Committee when the legislature's not in town.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carter, I appreciated your analysis of the redistricting. Do you have similar information for Sedgwick and Wyandotte County?
I knew that you were going to ask that, Trustee Cook. As I was mentioning those percentages, I thought that somebody's going to want to know what Sedgwick looks like. I don't have that, but it's easily enough obtained, and I could get those numbers.
I would at some point, if Johnson County is presumed to be at 23%, I'd be interested to know what the combination between Sedgwick, Wyandotte, and Johnson County will be in the new redistricting. And if you want to have fun, throw in Douglas and Shawnee as well.
I don't want to have too much fun.
Don't forget Marshall County.
Could I also receive that? Those are good questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee.
Dick will get that to us, I'm sure. Okay. Other questions of Mr. Carter? Dick, I want to thank you, Trustee Ingram, President Bound, and KACCT for the work on the Promise program to try to get an agreement through the Board of Regents that will allow community colleges to actually take advantage of that and market it and make sure we can make it available in August. And I know, Trustee Ingram, you're probably going to speak to that, or Dr. Bound will in his report, but I know you've been involved in that because it's a legislative mandate that the Board of Regents has to implement, and it's not as simple as it sounds. I know that, but we need to get it done. Thank you for your time and your effort in the past session.
Thank you.
The next item is the Faculty Association report, and tonight we're going to hear from the new Faculty Association Vice President, Brett Cooper. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Trustee Musil, and good evening. My name is Brett Cooper. I'm the Faculty Association Vice President, and my day job at the college is being the Director of the Math Resource Center. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board on the behalf of the FA. We've wrapped up the spring semester and put a bow on it with the ratification of the master agreement, and we thank the board for their unanimous support. Spring grades are in and summer classes have begun. 9 and 10-month faculty are attending conferences, updating their fall classes, teaching summer classes, and enjoying some well-earned time off after a historic year of adapting to unprecedented conditions. Saturday is Juneteenth, and the college has had programming celebrating this new federal holiday throughout the week. Professor Shabazz's presentation Monday night was moderated by college's BSU president, Solomon Webb, and was attended by over 100 people. More information about Juneteenth can be found at jccclibguides.com/Juneteenth. This month, I want to highlight the faculty who serve on 12-month contracts. 12-month faculty make up about 1/5 of the full-time faculty here. We work in almost every division of the academic branch, as well as the student services side of the college. We all know that the counselors are hard at work getting students enrolled for the fall semester, but they are also meeting with the behavioral intervention team, training and certifying with National Association of Behavioral Intervention and Threat Assessment, working with students on academic probation and suspension, preparing for Suicide Prevention and Education Week in September, and preparing presentations for the fall professional development days. But there are many other 12-month faculty all over the college. Self-paced faculty in math and English work with students who are starting and finishing their courses year-round. The self-paced program allows students to work on an alternate timeline at their own pace. This opens up our classes to parents, professionals who work full-time or travel, students who just need a different timeline or up against a deadline, in addition to students who just need a little more time than one semester gives. My colleagues in the academic resource centers and I are actively working with our tutors and students, helping to ensure that they have the support they need to succeed in their summer courses. We're open for drop-in students for the first time in 15 months. Although our students are slow to return to campus, our online services are going strong. In the library, some never left. Librarians have been working with the foundation and archives throughout the shutdown. Now they are catching up on projects that they have set aside over the past year. Our librarians are also taking on practicum students to help them through their programs of study. Our copyright librarian is in negotiations with vendors for the library, as well as for productions at the Midwest Trust Center. The librarians are also coordinating with other academic departments on campus to make sure their services are up to date and updating their website. Many of the career programs meet year-round as well. In fact, the cosmetology students were on the main campus for library orientation just this week. In emergency medical science, our 5 full-time faculty, and hopefully one more soon, run a 12-month program which continues during the summer as well as over the semester breaks. They also have 4 sections of new students in the EMR program this summer. In addition to the regular classes that they teach during the day and evening, they also supervise students working on their practicums 24 hours a day. These are just snippets of what the college's 12-month faculty are up to this summer. Our load does not diminish over the summer. In fact, it is a busy time of year for many of us as we fulfill our regular duties. And then on top of that, attend conferences, teach summer classes, and find time to spend with our families like our 9 and 10-month colleagues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brett, for that report. It's your first report, not to diss Dr. Leiker, but you're welcome back anytime with your report.
Thank you.
Are there any And I know, Brett, you were pretty serious in that. I've actually seen you smile a lot more than that, so feel free to be comfortable with this. As you talk to the board, are there questions from the trustees? Trustee Cross.
If I may, I've known Mr. Cooper for 8 years or so, and I was reminded tonight I had a law school professor named Bill Eckhart that was in Vietnam and helped prosecute the My Lai massacre and other places, and F. Lee Bailey was called in to help defend some of the defendants in that case. And Professor Eckhart told us the story, Professor Cooper, about one time they were walking out of court, and F. Lee Bailey had put his finger in Bill Eckhart's back and said, "Drop the notes, just talk." And my wife, I'll tell you, I read my notes a lot, and so I don't mean to josh you, but I thought I'd share that story. Thank you for being here tonight. I will note that we have a recommendation tonight where I think the adjunct will get about the same 2.5% raise that you helped negotiate for the FA and the other staff. So I want to thank you and the FA for doing that to make sure that, and the administration for so graciously providing that to all of our staff based upon what the FA negotiated. What did it mean, Brett, for you and the other faculty to reach an agreement so early this cycle?
It was a great load off our minds. As you know, the last round of negotiations went to impasse, which we worked hard to avoid, but it just wasn't in the cards for us last time. This time, I think the IBB process helped us find common ground sooner rather than later. And I attribute much of our success to that IBB process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That IBB refers to interest-based bargaining as opposed to traditional bargaining. And everybody knows I hate initials. So, Brett, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
You're
Appreciate your work and those of the other 12-month faculty, as well as our 9 and 10-month faculty. I think we thanked Jim and we thanked Diane Davis when she gave the report for the work over the past 15 months, and we thank you as well.
Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
just, one other thing, I stopped over to see Brett today, this afternoon, and it was good to see students back. The Math Resource Center was abuzz with students, and it was just good to see tutors working with students that are studying on their own, and it's nice to see activity on campus, and specifically in some of these resource areas that are critical to our students' success. So I thank Brett and the team for their work.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Johnson County Education Research Triangle Report. Trustee Cross.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question for the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't like acronyms, is that what you're saying?
Well, initial abbreviations that are foreign to many people.
I understand. What about K-State?
K-State is not foreign to anyone.
I thank the chair for answering the question. So we did not meet this past month, Mr. Chair, as we did not since April. We will meet on October 25th at K-State Olathe. I will tell you, we did receive our annual revenue. We were up 9.9% from this time last year. Total revenue we brought in for JCERT, so up to about $8.1 million this year. Mayor Dunn sent that around. So I typically in my own life and worldview use that as an economic indicator, and I thought I'd share that with the board, that revenues are up, sales taxes are up, right? You're the Johnson County expert, so I thought that's what I use
Right.
it as. So anyway, that concludes my report, and we'll meet in October.
Questions?
Where was that meeting in October?
This little startup called K-State Olathe.
Oh, thank you.
More to come from Trustee Cross.
KSU.
Kansas Association of Community College Trustees, our own Trustee Ingram, who is president of that organization.
Thank you very much, Chair Musil. We did meet. We had our quarterly meeting on Saturday, June the 5th, and I will be reporting from a recap that we have this time. Our executive director, Heather Morgan, had noted that some of the community colleges perhaps needed a little more of a unification in the reporting so that we were all sharing the same thing across the state in our respective colleges. So that's what I will be reporting from this evening. We did, our first order of business really was to approve our budget, and the proposed budget was amended, to include $250 more per college and that is to be used toward marketing of Kansas Community College and the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act. We just felt after some discussion that that would be a good way to utilize some additional dollars and would support all of the colleges. So we did vote to do that. We also approved college dues, which were generally decreased because of the decrease in student enrollment. The flat fee was, just as I mentioned, increased only for marketing, so all the other dues were flat. Senator Molly Baumgardner spoke about the legislative intent of the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act. And we all know how important and transformative this will be to our Kansas community colleges. So we are very excited about the Promise Act. Heather reported on the final state legislative appropriations this year for community colleges. As a system, tiered and non-tiered funding remained flat. Senate Bill 155 was increased by $1.2 million and $8.3 million in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, respectively. $10 million was added for the Promise Scholarship Act, and $5 million was added, and we've already talked about maintenance of effort for one-time, non-recurring expenses for each community college. She also provided an early budget request that will be presented, and I assume at this point has been presented to KBOR. We heard a report from Heather regarding the bills passed this session impacting community colleges. We did have some discussion on the federal free college programs and the many details, which many of those are very problematic. Consensus was that student access continues to be the most important factor and that the proposal to increase the Pell Grant may be a more palatable option to assist our students. Discussion also occurred on the COVID funds received by the colleges and that more COVID funds are being received by state and local governments, which might want to partner for upskilling programs and programs to support correctional education. The group also discussed upcoming meetings with the consensus to reconvene in person starting in August in Hutchinson. So we will be meeting the very last weekend in Hutch. I did attend the KBOR meeting yesterday. Dick Carter gave a really good presentation on that. Mainly I was there to be in support of the community colleges. They were discussing the Promise Act, and as he had mentioned earlier, there have been some challenges. We're moving forward. We're very excited about the collaboration in order to do so. But, certainly through the application process and a new program like this, there have been some challenges. So we were really just there to show our support for community colleges. I also was going to talk about the new regions, which has already been done. So I think I will just close my report with that information.
Thank you.
I
Any
don't
questions?
know if Dr. Bound has anything to.
Yeah. Well, why don't we hear from Dr. Bound, and then we'll go to questions.
So we were scheduled to have a meeting, the presidents, this morning, but because the KBOR meeting was running long, that meeting didn't happen. But I was able to participate, as Dick referenced, in the webinar this afternoon. And certainly there is progress being made related to the Kansas Promise. They've basically said that the application with some final tweaks is, from their perspective, ready to go. It's already out there for students to access, and so making too many more changes will make it what may be a complicated process to begin with, even more complicated for students, which isn't good for them in the long run. All of our programs were approved, as were the other programs around the state. So we know what the slate of programs is to move forward. And there was discussion, or at least information provided to us, around the efforts to finalize the fund distribution process. And so those discussions continue. There will be more conversation next week. I know Heather Morgan, Dennis Riddle, who's the president of the Community College Presidents Group, is meeting together with the KBOR leadership next week to see if we can work through a number of these issues that relate to the contract and so forth as we move forward. So we are certainly, and I recognize our team here at the college, from student success, specifically financial aid, and from a legal standpoint, from a legislative, many people have touched it here in the college and providing feedback together with the other community colleges around the state so that we have a collective voice but I know that our team has heavily influenced that feedback in the process. We're anxious to get this going because at the end of the day, this is about getting students in classes, getting them the skills they need that allow them to be successful in the workplace and or transfer to a four-year partner and then into the workplace. And for anybody in the listening public who may be participating in the Zoom meeting tonight, the scholarship program is a last dollar scholarship program that's in high demand, often high wage, but certainly high need, high demand programs with the whole intent of equipping people to get great jobs. And it's an economic development strategy for us as a state. And we're excited to support the program. We just have a few more details to work through to get to a successful implementation.
Thank you. Trustee Cross.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. President. I know a lot of people touch this, and I think the only possible criticism I could have is that I wish it was bigger, and I think that was true. I think that would be true for most all of us. Trustee Ingram, what role did our Johnson County legislative delegation have on this? Was there any opposition from them in how this was structured or how it's gone so far?
No, Molly Baumgartner probably has the most influence as chair of the Senate Education. I didn't want to mess that up. And she has been extremely instrumental and very supportive to, I can only speak to our executive director and the conversations that I've had with her, but she and Dick Carter and Ron Reichman, I know, has been involved as well. So I think there's a lot of local support for this. I don't want to speak out of turn, but all of the things that I have heard have been extremely positive from our delegation.
I think that's right, and that's what I've heard, and I just wanted to commend her and all of our other legislative allies that while critical, and I enjoy that role, I do, and it helps me sleep better at night, not that Trustee Musil cares, but just thanking them for the support that they do have of our college. And in this election year, it's impossible to explain to even allies of mine what this college means to me and what the community college movement in Kansas means.
Yes.
And so I thank you, Trustee Ingram, for your role in the broader community college movement in Kansas. And one final question. My only regret about K-State is that I wish we all could have the intelligence, grace, and class that you do, and Trustee Cook before you, in representing us on that association. And then it just matters to have the involvement in Topeka so that we have our interests represented and protected. And I thank the chair for the time.
And I'm smiling. I appreciate your comments. They're very, very kind.
I love K-State.
And the one thing that I would add to all of this is, and I didn't thank our staff, and I appreciate you doing that. I know a majority of you are seated right here in front of me. Thank you very much. I hear bits and pieces, and I am paying attention. It's not that I don't realize that you all have been involved, but it's a good opportunity on behalf of all of us to say thank you for your involvement in this, because I know you all have been very, very involved. So thank you.
Other questions?
Just Representative Reichman has been incredibly involved in this as well. And so we've been fortunate to have a delegation that's been supportive of this and also encouraging us to keep it moving because July 1 comes really quickly, and we want to meet students earlier in the summer as opposed to later in the summer because it's in their best interest.
And this has also been a good opportunity to see all of our community colleges unified, all the presidents working together across the state. This is about our students. This is about our state. There's probably nothing that I have been involved in that has been so impactful in my years on this board as this can be. So.
Trustee Smith Everett.
Thank you.
Well, I will, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to piggyback on that. I recently read the governor posted probably on Facebook or Twitter about what we as Kansas can do to help with our attrition of young people. And it was an article that went through several things, and we are a key component to that. So I'm really grateful for our team. I'm back here, I promise. But for all the involvement, I know when I went to the national conference last year of trustees in D.C., in Washington, D.C., some of our other partners spoke about, they just don't have the staff that we do. And so in times like this, where it's really imperative that we are coming together as a statewide initiative to support what our state needs, which is to stop the loss of young people and help with workforce development, I'm really grateful that we can be a part of that and that we can help all community colleges in Kansas succeed. You just mentioned in your report, it was out of curiosity, you said several other college representatives were on the meeting today. Do you have like a rough number? Was it just a couple that were on the meeting today, the K-Board meeting, or was it, because you were saying you had gone to the meeting, or I was assuming it was.
There were their presidents who were there.
Oh, it was
there were
okay.
their presidents.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering,
Yes.
I think the showing up together seems to also be a really good strategy, and I just wondered if that was 2 people every time, or if there was.
No,
okay.
no. In fact, I've really not gone before, and just felt like, just based upon everything that I was seeing and felt like we were involved in, and I was able to go, that I offered to go and went and didn't speak. I wasn't asked to speak. It was just there,
Right.
showing a presence.
Well, thanks for that too, because
Oh,
I think
you're welcome.
that's the know we really
Yep.
need this.
We're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to move into the foundation report. Trustee Snyder is our liaison with, I think, Trustee Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just note on that last topic, House Commerce Chairman Sean Tarwater was also very involved in the Promise Act, another Johnson County, and he deserves some credit for that as well. So the foundation held its annual luncheon virtually on Tuesday, May 18th. This virtual luncheon was shown broadcast on YouTube and is still available on the college's YouTube channel if you did not get to see it. So thank you to everyone that helped produce such a polished event, albeit virtually. The foundation's executive committee will meet next Tuesday at 5 p.m. And the first foundation meeting of the new fiscal year will be held on Thursday, August 26th, and this will be a foundation member social held at the athletic complex. Rob, I think, is going to promise it'll be a nice, cool 82 degrees, as I'm sure it will be. Do want to provide some special recognitions. As the fiscal year for the foundation ends, so do the terms of several key foundation leaders, and want to recognize a couple of people. First, Stuart Stein's final term as director with the foundation will end June 30th. Stuart has served the foundation for more than 2 decades in multiple roles, including board president, executive committee member, Some Enchanted Evening event chair, and much more. Brian Biggs and Mary Birch's final term also ends on the executive committee on June 30th. So thank you to Brian and Mary for their important work. Mary's also a foundation president alum, I guess. And finally, Suze Parker's term as foundation president ends at the end of the month as well. So thank you to Suze for her leadership during really one of the most challenging years for the foundation in our history. Marshawn Butler, vice president at Children's Mercy, begins officially on July 1st, and that is a 2-year term. So we'll hopefully see a lot of Marshawn the next couple of years. And finally, the last topic is Some Enchanted Possibilities. All trustees should have received a booklet, and probably many community members as well, about Some Enchanted Possibilities. That's kind of the umbrella effort to support our fall fundraising initiative, and underneath that is Some Enchanted Evening, the in-person gala that will be November 13th. Currently, the foundation is limiting that to 500 people, but as conditions improve, that may get expanded, and knock on wood, that would be great for all those that want to attend in person. For those that don't feel comfortable attending in person, there'll be an online component to that as well, and again, harking back to the Some Enchanted Opportunity. And that forum did well for the foundation last year, so hopefully that will continue this year. And just to date, more than $300,000 has already been contributed through these efforts, benefiting student scholarships and basic needs programs. Happy to try to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions of Trustee Snyder? If not, thank you. It will be nice to have a Some Enchanted Evening event with 500 people or more. Thank you for your effort on that, both of you. We'll move into the Committee of the Whole reports. We have 3 recommendations tonight, and as I think I announced to the few recommendations to the board, because the Committee of the Whole, we've eliminated our committee structure and meeting once. I'm going to delegate the reporting of items from the Committee of the Whole out to other trustees as we go forward. starting with the officers, if they're willing to do so. And the first one tonight will be from Vice Chair Snyder.
Thank you again. The Committee of the Whole met via Zoom on May 24th. All of the trustees participated, and minutes of the meeting can be found on page 3 of the packet. Or page 1, actually, page 1, depending on how you read it. If you read it with the agenda, if you read it, it's either page 1 or 3, depending on your perspective. We were provided an update of the Science Lab project, and we'll hear much more about that tonight during Dr. Bound's report. We received an update from our external auditors at Reuben Brown about their annual audit plan, followed by additional discussion by Justin McDade, the college's director of audit. Justin told us that the college's internal controls, policies, and procedures are sound. So the community can rest assured that we get audits every year, and generally those are good for the college. Janelle Vogler, Associate Vice President of Business Services, reviewed several single-source purchases and awards of bids. We have 2 recommendations tonight that came out of the Committee of the Whole for approval. The first is on page 2 of the packet regarding single-source Dell technology purchases, using federal CARES and other recovery funds for a total amount of $150,000. I move that the board accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve additional Dell technology purchases for an estimated expenditure of $150,000 for the duration of FY21.
Second.
Been moved by Trustee Snyder and seconded by Trustee Cross to approve $150,000 for Dell computer products. I didn't ask this in the Committee of the Whole, but through end of fiscal year 21, that's how many days from now, right? Is that the right time? So those will be purchased
13 days.
in this fiscal
They'll
year?
be purchased in this
Okay.
fiscal year, yes.
Okay. And then that way available for students and faculty and staff for the fall?
That's correct.
Great, okay. That's the only question I had. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The second recommendation is on page 5 of the packet regarding an RFP for a customizable course marketing website for the Continuing Education Division. There were 5 proposals, and the evaluation team recommended ImageMakers as having the most complete package. I move the board accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the proposal from ImageMakers for a course marketing website for continuing education for a base year of $45,500 and a total estimated expenditure of $238,500 for the optional renewals through 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Snyder and seconded by Trustee Ingram.
Sorry, yep. I didn't do the motion.
To approve the recommendation for ImageMakers, Inc. for the course marketing website for continuing education. Is there any discussion or are there any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
On the-
Trustee Smith Everett.
On this part of our agenda, because the item I want to talk about is actually in this part of the packet, do you mind if I make a comment?
Absolutely not. I mean, absolutely, you may make a comment.
On page 3 of the packet is the approval, which does not need to come to the board because it's below the threshold, for the Chick-fil-A renovation. As I mentioned in the Committee of the Whole, when I was campaigning for this position, the only negative feedback I ever got from students was some of our LGBTQ students who said it really bothered them that we had Chick-fil-A on campus. I mentioned that in Committee of the Whole. I wanted to mention it again at our public meeting. I am especially cognizant of it during Pride Month. And I think this is an opportunity. I spoke with Dr. Bound about it this month, that I'm not recommending, Janelle also shared in our meeting that it is also one of the highest ranked food options that our students have. And so, this can be 2 things at odds with each other. And I wanted to say it again in the public meeting because I wanted to recognize that some of our LGBTQ students or faculty and staff may be uncomfortable with it. And I think that that's for us to recognize and own. But it also presents us with a great opportunity to think outside the box of how we can still continue to make it clear that we support those students, and that an organization that has had sort of a mired PR problems with LGBTQ community does not represent our views. And so I wanted to take that opportunity to talk about or say that now, since it's sort of not going to come to us as a item particularly, but it is right there in that portion of our board packet. So
I appreciate that. And with respect to the policy levels, we have established policies for the board of certain reporting requirements up to a certain level of contract, and then board approval required above that. And that's what Trustee Smith Everett was referring to. So you brought that up in the committee of the whole. I appreciate you bringing it up again here. I don't see this as in any way diminishing our support for LGBTQ or diversity or DEI on campus. I understand that there can be a difference of opinion on that. And there is. I mean, not that there can be, that there is.
There is.
So I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think it will help inform us in the future. Other questions about the committee of the whole report? If not, we will move on to the president's recommendation for action with the science building rolling GMP guaranteed maximum price report.
All right, and I'd like to call Executive Vice President Mike Neal to the podium, and he'll lead us through the discussion tonight.
Mike, welcome to your first podium presentation as the Vice President of Business Affairs, or COO. I'm not sure what all the title is, but Mike joined us. You joined us, I think, May 1 officially.
May 3rd. May 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. We look forward to your presentation here.
Well, Chair Musil, thank you very much. And let me start by saying two things. One thing to you, and then one thing to Trustee Cross. We will not use acronyms. And we will touch on economic indicators. So all in this presentation. I say we because I am a part of a team that will be presenting tonight. Joining me will be Chris Davis with PGAV, and then also Matt Glenn with McCown Gordon. They're our partners in this process and have worked diligently. And I would be remiss to say that the work that's been done up to this point has been done by that team and a lot of folks here as a part of college. And me being here for the last 6 weeks has only been a small portion of that. So what you'll see tonight is a culmination of a great deal of work by a lot of people. So I'll get started. A couple areas we're going to touch on tonight you've seen before. We'll talk about the project in and of itself. We'll talk about the timeline. We'll spend a great deal of time focused on the budget because that's exactly what we're coming here to ask for tonight for approval from the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris and let him get us started with respect to the project and where we are at this point. Chris?
Before you get going, and maybe you said this, I was flipping through a couple things here. You have in front of you the presentations, if you didn't say that, and I would ask that you write down, if you get a slide on there that you're like, oh, I got a question there, write it down. Their hope is to move through the presentation and come back and answer your questions, so the slide deck that you have in hard copy would give you a place to write down notes and know exactly where it connected.
Thank you, Dr. Bound. Chris.
Yes, Mike, thank you. I wanted to start by saying thanks to all the trustees, and we're happy to be here before everyone tonight, and we appreciate the opportunity to present the project. Just to run through the agenda briefly, we want to recap the project scope. McCown Gordon will talk a lot about the construction schedule, about the concept of the phased guaranteed maximum price approach. They'll talk about their estimating process and how the budget was developed. There's a lot of discussion that you've probably heard through other avenues about the current market conditions with escalation and chain of procurement chain issues that they're carefully managing. And then we'll give a summary of the master budget and with the request that's being made tonight and the immediate next steps that the project will take if it's approved. And so moving on to the next slide, slide number 3. We wanted to start tonight just by reviewing the high-level goals to optimize your science teaching labs by improving the students' experience with a focus upon pedagogy, safety, and inclusion, which are 3 priorities that we'll discuss more here in a little bit. But looking at this aerial map of the project, we'll co-locate the fume hood intensive labs, the physical science labs in the classroom and laboratory building. They're towards the right side of the screen. And there's great benefits to doing that by increasing the mechanical efficiency of concentrating the ventilation intensive labs in one building so that we can optimize the mechanical system to accommodate those labs. And then we're also co-locating the life science labs in the science building, the SCI, that you see there in the middle of the screen. And this creates benefits for both departments by creating these wonderful departmental adjacencies that will help collaboration and education of the students. We are also maintaining 2 biotechnology labs in the Rainier Center up on the 3rd floor, and we're providing for important swing space in both the former Arts and Technology building, what used to be called the ATB. Currently, you'll see it referenced as the WCMT, and I can't tell you what that acronym stands for, but it's your former arts building. And then utilizing quite a bit of the old welding lab building. And there are a couple of spaces not represented here, not publicly announced just yet, that will complete all of the swing space needed to get the project through its final stages in the fall of 2022 and spring of 2023. And so moving on to slide number 4. PGAV had the great fortune, the opportunity to go through a detailed programming analysis that wasn't necessarily afforded to the 2017 study when that was done. But we were able to get important faculty input that led to an enhanced scope of work to meet a forward-looking programmatic program for the college and for its science program. And that does reflect a scope that's beyond what was discussed in 2017. So we wanted to talk about that in some detail here today. We are renovating currently, and you'll see some numbers on this in a moment, approximately 84,000 square feet, where the initial 2017 study had looked at 61,500 square feet, representing a significant increase in just square footage that's being touched. Some of that is represented by investment in the swing spaces that we just talked about. And those swing spaces, as we keep the science programs in continual operation, those important swing spaces will help us to shorten the construction duration. And rather than spending money on overhead through temporary mobile classrooms and extending the construction phase, help us to be more efficient with this project, and also make investments, especially in the case of the old welding lab building, investments that can be recouped by the college, making the spaces more adaptable to future academic programming. At the core of the science program, we are adding 4 new labs, starting with the anatomy and physiology lab to satisfy increased enrollment demand in that program. We're really excited about 2 new undergraduate research labs. These will be entirely new to the college, one for physical science and one for life sciences. And these will expose students to research environments that they will encounter at 4-year institutions and beyond. We're also looking at a dedicated dental hygiene lab. Dental hygiene currently co-locates with your physics labs, and there are issues created by dust from grinding of the dental hygiene dental models that are quite harmful to much of the sensitive electronic equipment used by the physics instructors. So that will help both of those programs out. We're also looking at renovating the analytical instrumentation lab, the central chemical stock room, along with other critical support spaces that support these teaching labs. And we are renovating 5 1970s era science classrooms in the science building that are woefully undersized, and they range from 300 to 500 square foot each. But we are providing new active learning classrooms to support the science and other programs on campus. And then we're making other just important infrastructure improvements. And some of those items include adding a fire suppression system in the science building. which it does not currently have. And this is the single most important life safety enhancement that you can make to a building to protect students, faculty, and the public. It's very rare that you would build a building anymore without a fire suppression system. When this building was constructed in the early 70s, it did not have that. So we think that's an important public safety improvement. And the administration, under Mike's leadership, has done some investigation with your insurance underwriter, and it appears that this will improve the overall fire risk rating in this building from fair to good, having long-term financial benefits, reducing operational costs for the college. We're looking at re-roofing the 4th floor of the CLB, the classroom laboratory building, which is currently experiencing some leaking at some of the science labs. And not to get too technical, but we're looking at switching the classroom laboratory building, its air conditioning system that is currently fed from the west chiller plant, central chiller plant, and feeding that from the east plant. And that will have good long-term development benefits to the college. That west chiller plant is nearly at capacity, and it will open up development opportunities on the west side of campus for be it new buildings, be it transition to more technically demanding programs such as this that increase ventilation demands. Now is the best time to undertake that exercise when we're doing new mechanical systems in the CLB building and doing some intensive work there. And then finally, as mentioned before, we'll be making investments to improve some of the what were industrial spaces recently vacated by the arts and career technology programs, utilizing these spaces for swing space, again, to help reduce construction duration and overhead costs, putting those dollars into improving existing campus facilities that can benefit future programs. Okay, and slide 5, you've seen this slide before, but just quickly to say that it illustrates the expansion of the floor plates on the 2nd and 4th floors of the classroom laboratory building. And that provides a very modest but quite important square footage increase that we'll talk about here in a moment on the next slide. We could move to slide 6. So this slide illustrates...
Sorry, Chris, I think it's going a little slow for me here.
Oh, okay, yeah, no worries, Matt. Thanks for your help. So this slide illustrates the key benefit of adding just a little bit of square footage to the project to increase the net square foot per student allocation to meet more contemporary and nationally recognized benchmarks in the 50 to 55 net square feet per student range. Your science teaching labs are currently in the mid 40s, 45, 46 net square feet per student. And you can see the benefits here in these diagrams for the opportunity to create more flexible seating options and more active learning arrangements in the new labs that relieve congestion created by the old, what we call peninsula layouts. As we move on to slide 7, we really wanted to reference and talk about that process of relieving congestion and opening up these labs. Just even doing that just a little bit has tremendous benefits to the 3 prioritized initiatives relating to pedagogy, safety, and inclusion improvements in the science teaching labs. So that little bit of extra square footage creates more open and dynamic spatial relationships that benefit both peer-to-peer and faculty-to-peer interaction, improving sight lines from students to teaching wall, from faculty to student bench, which has an impact on safety. It improves circulation, creates more flexible use and approach both to, in, and around the student bench and to equipment. And again, that impacts all of these categories. And as it relates to inclusivity, we want to think beyond just the mobility limitations and, quote unquote ADA requirements. So this is not about just what we have to do, but how can we use more universal design principles to make these labs more open, more free-flowing, and accommodating for everyone. And that ranges to all manner of needs, from people of all sizes, those with sight and hearing limitations, and again, just more open, accessible, and flexible labs that provide accommodation in a way that's not stigmatizing and does not segregate any faculty, students, or the public. And then finally tonight, we want to just review and reinforce the college's commitment to sustainability. And I really wanted to start by commending the college on the decision to renovate existing building stock. And that really is the single best sustainability strategy that a building owner can make, especially when you have really robust and durable concrete frame buildings. Renovation represents far lower carbon footprint per square foot for a renovated building relative to building new. And one of the big reasons is directly related to concrete itself. This statistic really, it set me back in my chair. I knew it intuitively just as an architect, but when I read it last fall, doing some research on some other projects, it really makes me pause. But the cement industry itself accounts for approximately 8% of global carbon emissions. And in 2015, that represented 2.8 billion tons of carbon put into the atmosphere. And just to put that in perspective, if the cement industry was a country, it would rank third behind only the US and China in carbon emissions. So renovating these existing buildings is just a fantastic strategy related to sustainability. And again, just want to commend the college for thinking in this manner. Talking a little bit about sustainability and LEED, which is a benchmark that we all are familiar with. LEED will require renovations to touch 50% of the floor area in a building as a prerequisite for certification. And since we are below that threshold, we are not able to officially certify these projects, but we are implementing sustainable design strategies and designing a certifiable project. And we've listed just a few select strategies here, starting with the use of high efficiency fume hoods in the labs. The labs are incredibly energy intensive programs directly related to the ventilation required to provide quality indoor air quality in those spaces. But these fume hoods are able to be set back to a lower face velocity. There's a large difference between an organic chemistry lab and a biology lab, and they have different needs. And so as faculty use these labs, if they find that their air quality is quite good and they have low chemical usage, these hoods are able to set back to a 60 feet per minute instead of the standard 100 feet per minute face velocity, which will have tremendous impacts on energy usage. We'll be utilizing FSC certified wood, which is wood, of course, is a natural and renewable product. And FSC certification procures wood from sustainably managed forests, and we have a lot of lab casework, and so that's a meaningful strategy. We'll be using zero and low volatile organic compound emitting finished materials, and a great example of that is rubber floor tile in these labs. Rubber is another natural and renewable, and also highly durable and low maintenance material. We'll be working with McCown Gordon to implement a construction waste management program to reduce construction waste. And our mechanical engineer is utilizing a host of strategies, including dual energy recovery systems, including a glycol system for the chemical fume hood exhaust. Because of the hazardous materials on that exhaust, you're not allowed to use a traditional air-to-air heat recovery wheel, which we will be using for the traditional ventilation systems, but we also have a glycol system to recover the heat that's escaping through the fume hood exhaust. We'll be utilizing a setback of lab ventilation rates that are triggered by occupancy sensors, and also nighttime hour temperature setbacks that are automated that'll save energy when the spaces are not in use. And these along with using LED light fixtures and low flow plumbing fixtures to save both energy and water. So we're pretty excited about the sustainability initiatives on this project. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt, and he'll talk more about schedule and cost, budget, and construction implementation.
Thanks, Chris. I'm Matt Glenn with McCown Gordon Construction. I'm the project executive. I'm calling you from my hotel room in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And I think the slideshow is a little delayed getting back to Overland Park, so I apologize. Maybe we're a little off here a few seconds. But I wanted to go through and just kind of go and highlight just where we're at on the schedule. You know, Chris previously kind of benchmarked back to the 2017, the Envision program with the 19 labs. And with that, the schedule was kind of laid out in different couple options between either doing it over 3 years in 3 phases or potentially maybe over 5 years in 5 phases. When we initially got hired for this project, talking to the college, you know, there was a hope of, hey, how can we take advantage of having the reduced in-person classes coming up for the fall of 2021. So when they're working with the different department heads and looking about how if we had actually the less amount of students on here and the less amount of need for actual classroom and face-to-face, how could we figure out how to do this in less phases? So as I kind of went through in the committee of the whole meeting last month, talked about how we're going through in that phases where we can actually shrink this down to roughly an 18-month, really 2-phase schedule. So looking here, initially coming out of this meeting with the budget approval, hopefully, we would actually be starting that first swing space in the WCMT building to have that ready to host classes in there for the fall of 2021. And also then we would go into starting the CLB demolition, the classroom laboratory building. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to use an acronym there. But classroom laboratory demolition starting this fall, and then doing the structural expansion that Chris kind of noted earlier. And then also we will be starting the swing space in the welding lab building, WLB, as well to provide more additional lab swing space as we get into starting the CLB interiors as well. And so WLB swing space would be done at the end of the 2021 calendar year, which then be able to use for the spring of 2022. And then we'd be finishing up the CLB, the classroom laboratory building next summer in 2022, and then we'd be able then to start hosting classes for the fall of 2022. And then over that summer, we would start the science classroom building, the SCI, and we would then be renovating and demoing that through the fall of 2022. And in that way, then we would be completely done with all of the construction starting in spring of 2023. And then last month, we also kind of outlined our plan for doing the phase guaranteed maximum price. So with that, we would actually then be submitting here in June the guaranteed maximum price for the WCMT classroom project, and then also the CLB to actually order the structural steel now to get ahead. And I'll talk a little bit later just about escalation and supply chain issues. We'll be rolling in that, and then later this summer, we would submit the guaranteed maximum price for actually doing all the demolition work for the CLB building, and then going ahead and starting to order all of the major mechanical equipment, stuff that has a lot of lead times in it, to make sure that we have it here on time for our schedule. And then we would then, the next guarantee maximum price number 2, that would be for the really the core and shell, kind of all of the skin of that structural addition that we're going to do. So make sure that we can get it cladded before winter hits. And then GMP number 3, that'll be then for the balance of all of the interior build out of the labs and the classroom laboratory building. Then followed up by our last guaranteed maximum price, which would be for the science classroom building and then for the Rainier Center. So in the budget that we're going to present here in a few minutes, just to go through, just so everyone can understand and have a little confidence in how we go through and presenting that budget. So first, when we get the drawings and the plans from the design team, we go through and we do a complete quantity takeoff of everything that is in there to make sure that we understand of all of the items that are included in here, and we make sure that we have them quantified with a certain price. So we just don't do a wholesale square footage estimate. We go down and we take the detail from how many doors are in here, how many fume hoods, how much lab case work, make sure we truly understand all the components in there. And we put that into a detailed estimate. And then we turn on and we actually share that with the design team and the college, just so that way then we get another set of eyes going through to make sure that we're all on the same page of what the scope is in the project, that we make sure we have the budget accounted for. And then just to go through on the pricing, then we'll go out to actually the market, to our trade partners. to get their input on, for them to review of what is the current cost right now for all these different items, and also look at are there any cost options with that maybe we're specifying an XYZ brand, but this AA brand is actually a little more cost effective and you're going to get the same quality. So we're going out to them and making sure that we have all of the right numbers accounted for in here. And then the last thing there kind of talk about other items included is escalation and supply chain, which, has been a hot topic lately in the market. And for us, we used to kind of apply escalation as a whole across the project, and we do somewhere between 4 to 5% per calendar year. But now we understand that some products are more volatile, like steel, for instance. We've seen somewhere between like 20% right now annually on steel escalation. So now we're going through and we're actually going and accounting for that escalation kind of more by scope and by material item of where the current market is. So that way we're making sure we're putting the confidence in there that we're capturing what the real today dollar is and then projecting it out to when we're going to buy it. So kind of that pie chart on the right is just kind of really just a makeup of what's all into this budget. So as I talked about that trade partner input, so we have 89% of that is actually pricing from the market. And when we do that, we don't ever use like what the low price is with it. We go through and we will analyze if we get several numbers for one scope to make sure we understand it. Maybe it's not the low, maybe it's not the high, maybe it's a blend. And we'll also apply to that to our historical data that we know to make sure that we have the accurate number in there and we're just not using the low dollar. And then, we'll all then drive that out when we do the competitive bid process to actually then understand what is the low value in there to make sure, but at least now we have the budget accounted for. And then also on some items that we don't get complete a trade partner budget for it, at least when we do our detailed takeoff, that we can actually give them our unit pricing for like flooring. So we say that we have X amount of square feet of a rubber floor, and in there, what is that current market price right now? So maybe in there, that's what we'll do those unit costs. And then we use our cost history as well, that for some things that maybe we don't have trade market input, we'll just go back, what has it currently been buying for recently, and make sure we include that in here. And then last, allowances. So those are things that we don't really know yet what the design will be as we're working through the design team, or make sure it could be a risk that's associated with it. So we just assign a dollar amount to capture it. And really, I'm here working as a team. I think we've really had to minimize that down to where we just have less than 1% allowances included in the budget.
Man, let's try to get to the next few slides pretty efficiently so we'll spend a little time on the budget.
All right, no worries. Well, then on market escalation, this is just a graph here from Engineer News Record going back to 2005, just kind of representing just what escalation's been trending month over month. So those red bars is vertical bars. That's 1 month of escalation, and you see there on the far right, that's going up to that 0.25%, 1%, whatnot. So this is kind of just shows you where that black line is at. Has been where it's been trending historically around that 3%. You see back in 2008 when the recession hit, it was going up ahead of time and then it dove back down. So go and just kind of isolate more just to talk about where we're at. This is looking about the last year and a half since really the start of the pandemic of where escalation has been. And you've kind of seen that month over month where we're getting close to like 1% change and then 2% change. And this is not to go through and just kind of scare us of where the market is, it's just so we understand where we're at. And just so everyone has a comfort level, we've been including all of this in our numbers to make sure that we are capturing that escalation going forward for what we know recently. And then I want to go and just do a comparison back to the 2017 program. So those two bars on the left, so those were actually a couple different options for the 2017 program. Went through and did the estimate. So we're between $320 a square foot up to $350 a square foot. Now when we go and escalate that estimate for 2017 up to today's dollars, we're then at $365 a foot for the low option up to $401 roughly a foot. And then we're going to use that here in a minute to compare to where the numbers actually came out for this project. And then this is, we talked about the supply chain issues in here. So this is kind of comparison of certain different materials right now, where they were kind of, back to 2020 numbers. So like metal studs, which is a common kind of off-the-shelf item, we call it, to where they've gone from a 1 week to a 3 week lead time. Or steel joists and decking has gone from a 2 to 3 month lead time before now to 6 to 8 months. And in here, we're just showing us here that, right now a lot of stuff lead times are out there. We have accounted for all these in our schedule. That's one of the reasons why this first guaranteed maximum price we're submitting actually includes all the structural steel in here and the decking to make sure that we can buy it early on to ensure that we have it here on time to meet the schedule. So this is kind of where we're at, just trending, but this is all accounted for currently in our schedule. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Neal to kind of talk about the budget.
Thanks, Matt. So, trustee members, ultimately, we're asking for this project, $44,150,000. It's comprised of about $34.33 million for construction, $2.9 million of professional fees, furniture, fixtures, and equipment of just under $3 million, and then we layered in a contingency of 10% of about $4 million, which gets us to the grand total. And on the next slide, I'll just kind of talk through the comparison and contrast between this project and the study that we did in 2017. So the 2017 study was just under $22 million in construction costs. This is $34 million. The primary differences are there is additional square footage that we're touching this time and then higher cost per square foot given inflation. Those are the primary drivers of the differences. And I have them quantified by specific buildings if you would like to get that information, but we've got it broken out in terms of what drove that. Last time we did the study, for everything else beyond the construction, we put it all under one bucket called soft cost. So we took this effort and went through and actually did the cost analysis and broken out our professional fees, FF&E, and so forth. And so the difference there is that there's the gap between where we were then was about 8.4 million, with around 9.2 is inflation, simply inflation, higher costs that you would see from 2017 to 2021. As we said, this does touch more square footage, so 61,000 square feet before. This is over 84,000, so around 84,000 square feet. The last timeline was 60 months. This is less than 24 months, so you get a nice improvement in terms of being able to bring the project together, and that's why we have the construction manager at risk facilitating this process for us. And the cost per square foot are comparable when you adjust them for inflation. If you take the numbers from the last project to today and adjust it for inflation, you get a very comparable cost per square foot.
Yeah, and Mike, just to look more just in detail, so right here is kind of that breakdown by building of where we're at budget-wise, that June 2021 number. Going down to mix up that 34 million in the construction costs. So we kind of went one step further to kind of break out some of the buildings by square footage so we kind of understand to use that comparison. So for the COB building, originally back in 2017, we did not have the structural expansion included in there, so we kind of broke that cost out of that 4.7 million from the balance of the interior renovation. If we look at that interior renovation right now is trending at $403 a square foot. And then we look down at the science building, which that is mainly all just interior renovation, and that's trending at $380 a square foot. So when you take and kind of blend those together, and when you go back and look at where we took the 2017 program and escalated to today's dollars, we're sitting there right there in the range of really the cost is very comparable from that original budget. So to talk about just the immediate next steps, I think here in a minute we're going to ask for the formal approval of the project budget tonight. We also then will be turning around and submitting a guaranteed maximum price for the WCMT and the COB structural steel to get approval, and we'll actually be starting the WCMT construction here still in the month of June. And then over the next 60 days, and here we'll be starting that construction I just mentioned for WCMT. The design team will finish up the balance of the design for the structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and demo for the classroom laboratory building. We then will be also finalizing the design for the welding lab building swing space, and then finishing up with the envelope of the COB expansion, and then finishing up the design development for the interior documents.
And with that, we say thank you for your patience, and do you have any questions?
It's pretty simple. I mean, there's not much going on here, Mike, so I doubt there'll be any questions. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Dr. Cook apparently has a question. I bet there'll be some questions.
Thank you for the presentation. And my questions are probably going to be very unfair for you and Dr. Bown and other new people to the team. And a lot of it's my own ignorance and clarification. From 2017 to 2021, we have significant additional detail in what we're requesting. Was there any state or federal legislation that drove the desire for increased space in the renovation project? Because when you look at slide 4, 2017 program, we want to renovate 19 labs, and then in 2021, we've got a whole list of detail. Did any state or federal legislation drive that decision-making? And that's why I say it's very unfair for me to ask you, because you are really new to the team.
I'm trying to tag team, definitely don't want to step on the new work.
Randy,
Need you at the podium, probably.
with an introduction.
You bet. This is Randy Weber, former interim EVP for Finance and Administrative Services. So as far as federal or state legislative requirements, no, there weren't any. What happened here was in 2017 when we did a study, what the team at the time did was said, let's just take a snapshot. We know science labs are going to be something in the future. We did obviously beyond back of napkin math to say what would it look like to renovate our 19 labs. That wasn't a project. It didn't involve faculty. It didn't ask them what their future learning needs were. Then you fast forward 4 years and this is the real project. And when we go into the real project, what you see is the need for 4 new labs, 2 research labs, an A&P lab, a dedicated dental hygiene lab, the expansion of a building. So rather than using the peninsulas, because the faculty said that's not a good learning environment, it does that. So it wasn't a legislative requirement. It was when we got into the actual project itself and said, rather than saying what might it be in 2017 with our 19 labs, it came to 23 labs to meet the new. So the scope of the project grew as it was identified that the needs of our future STEM learners would.
So my assumption then, Dr. Weber, is that on the 4 new labs, that implies we didn't have those labs previously.
That is correct.
So that was a program growth request because our program is growing.
So in planning for the project, it was identified that an additional A&P lab, anatomy and physiology lab, would be necessary based on current and future enrollments. We added the 2 undergraduate research labs, which is really critical to what we do and grow with our students with experience, so they're caught up at the 4-year level when they get there. And then the dental hygiene lab was one that they were sharing in the past, and realizing that both departments it helps enrollment in both areas if they're not sharing that lab.
Reference is made to growing enrollment, so I'm assuming we have a waiting list for students to get into these programs, and that's what's driving the demand for increased space?
Enrollments in these science classes are very healthy and have been for years.
Thank you. Then I have a couple more just for clarification. In the science lab renovation project report, and I understand that we have labs in SCI, CLB, and the Rainier Center. And yet on page 18, we're suggesting to spend over $2 million in WCMT, WLB, and future space. My assumption is that has nothing to do with the science labs. Is that correct?
I'll start, and then I'll some of my colleagues who've been a little bit longer, I'll let Mickey chime in. As a part of this effort, we are taking students and faculty primarily that are in existing space and going to relocate them to the swing space. As a part of that effort, we're also going to address structural needs in those particular spaces at WCMT and WLB as well. So that's a part of the process that we're doing for this effort.
So in the $400,000 for future space has to do with the swing space? What's the future space for $400,000?
Mickey McLeod, Executive Vice President of Academic Affairs. So what you're seeing here in that is swing space for that $200,000 that you were talking about. So that piece began with, in the original plan from 2017, it was going to take us 5 years to do this project. So there would be 5 years of disruption for us to be capable of doing it. We got the scope down to 2 years so that we could save money on future costs for construction instead of expanding it to 5 years, which required the use of swing spaces for us to be able to effectively bring online labs so that students can all still get into their classes without us having to cancel courses and not have spaces. Future programming pieces include equipment and growth in programs that are pretty much on the cutting edge. Things like our biotech program, which we've been reworking. Those are those labs in the Rainier Center, which are not going to be torn out. They are going to be replatted a little bit, and newer technologies in those spaces. Things like the electronic dissection tables, where we can do so in a virtual format and manipulate the pieces using robotic hands, those sorts of things. So that future programming piece includes equipment as well as newer programs that we are revamping and bringing online, which require more cutting edge work.
So those swing spaces then, and that about $2 million, the planning ahead is saying we're going to use those for new programs or advanced programs?
Yes,
okay.
that will be advanced programming. Once we move those folks back out of those spaces, they will still be utilized.
And in addition, we're assuming that's going to save construction costs over a 60-month period?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then on page 17, the reason I'm getting at this is, you know, for the public to say you're going from 34 to 44 million just like that, that's a pretty significant increase, even though the cost of materials we all know is going up. But I find on page 17, when we look at the 2017 program, a couple of things. One, we've got a $13 million increase in costs from 17 to 21, and that I can take and understand as a cost of increased construction costs. But what we didn't include is about $10 million in professional services, furniture, owner contingency of $4 million, and I have a little problem with, you know, we automatically put in 10%. As a former superintendent of schools, if there was money in the budget to spend, we somehow found a way to spend it. And so that $4 million contingency seems a little high when we've got the detail and everything else. But I guess I'm feeling better that we've got about $10 million now that we didn't include previously. So it doesn't make the increase from the 34 million to 44 million look that extreme when we hadn't even accounted for 10 million of those costs previously. So I just needed that for my own clarification. You know, those schedules to order materials is just really a challenge, and I appreciate the work you've all done. So thank you for those clarifications.
Thank you, Trustee Cook.
On those soft costs, it looks like in the 2017 program, there was 8.4 million included. There was just a rough target of all soft costs, and now we have a breakdown that's about 10 million for all of those soft costs. Is that right?
That would be a fair characterization, Trustee Musil.
So it's a $13 million difference in construction costs because of the scope issues and the programmatic issues you talked about.
Exactly, the 2 points that my 2 colleagues made. Yes, sir.
It's a million four-ish.
About $1 million
difference.
Gotcha. Other questions? Trustee Snyder?
Mike, I don't know if this also would be for you or someone else. I guess I am, so number one, there's a lot of value in this, and I don't argue with anything that we're trying to do. It's all clearly needed and will be helpful to our students. I guess my question is more of a process question. This board, I don't remember if we've actually approved something around this project, but we've definitely had multiple conversations, and the consensus, you know, has been arrived at that we should move forward. Did I miss something from all those conversations to this? More around the roughly, as I calculated, 35% increase in square footage. That is material in my view, and going from, not that I would have been able to regurgitate 19 labs versus 23, but it seemed like we went from here to a long way over here without much apprisement of the board, I guess. And did I miss something, or how do we reframe this moving forward?
Trustee Snyder, I'm certainly going to ask my 2 colleagues here to help to join me to answer part of that. I'll address the cost piece, and I'll let them address the square footage piece. The cost piece, as Randy said, when we went from a study to a project, there's more work that you have to do. You get more detailed information, and that took time. So the actual cost numbers that we're sharing with you tonight, This is the first time in totality when we had the furniture, fixture, and equipment detailed in totality, where we had the construction cost detailed to the level that we were sufficient with it. And we had a chance to do our own due diligence to make sure the numbers were rational. This is the first time we've had that information pulled together and are able to present it. So that is new, just as we've gotten the information. Now, the scope has changed, and I'm certainly not able to speak to that, so I'll just defer to my two colleagues.
You bet I can jump in on that a little bit. I think a couple pieces of information to answer that. As far as coming to the board before, we historically, when we did the facilities master plan approval, some of you were on the board then, the board did in fact approve the plan and then components, costs of the plan. Otherwise, we usually don't bring construction projects to you for approval until this point right here, which is, are you prepared for us to spend the money? We do the planning. And so the updates to date have been to let you know this is a project on the horizon. We want you to be surprised. We've kind of earmarked a project that has years ago been at $30 million. I don't think anybody's surprised to see the materials costs go up. But then programming and additional costs for the project grew over time, most substantially. The square footage didn't grow as far as taking over more buildings. Where the square footage really started to grow was the expansion of the building. And in early conversations, I asked kind of some hard questions around that, like, this is a meaningful cost, is it a meaningful gain? And it became very evident, particularly with conversations with faculty. They were adamant that the peninsula learning styles are very difficult for them. It doesn't help with the accessibility needs of many of our students. And really hard work with our partners from PGAV and McCown-Gordon, really extending those buildings was our best option in order to meet that learning environment need and preventing us from having to build a new building. So that's where the additional square footage came in. It's always been CLB and science. Now, some additional costs that are here that help us is, at one point in time as part of this project, one of the things we considered was bringing in the modular classrooms. That's very common in a lot of projects. And we decided if we could claim these underutilized buildings right now, particularly the WLB, and upgrade the systems in there, that's going to save us future project costs down the road. We're going to upgrade the lighting in there, the HVAC in there as part of this project, and that's going to help us when we go down the road and dedicate that space to a different program to have that cost already saved. So we're not using money on modulars that are going to go away at the end of a project. We're upgrading a different building that has some significant costs as part of this project that will realize savings down the road when we go dedicate that to another academic program down there. So it is more real-time costs now, but hopefully at a cost savings down
Mr.
the
Chair,
road.
if I might, to Paul's question, the minutes on page 7 of our packet outline pretty detail how the board has been involved since 2017. It cites 5 or 6 meetings we've had since then. So I just wanted to reference.
No, I appreciate it. No, I know I can recognize we've had multiple conversations. I guess it has not been apparent to me, so I don't know if that's just I wasn't looking at it correctly, that we had expanded the scope in such a material way.
I think the design, our intent was at a couple committee of the holes ago was to really kind of bring you the design and maybe and maybe we could have done a better job at that meeting, but it was to say it's to bring this out, it's to use WLB. The goal then was to kind of tell you this is what the project is and what it includes, and in this meeting today is here's the kind of the costs for those.
Sure, and perhaps just not having that cost information at the time just didn't connect the dots for me.
Exactly.
If I could just, one other thing that I'll go on a limb here. Conversations, one of the first conversations Dr. Weber and I had, Dr. McLeod, Dr. Weber and I had, was interest around do we do a new building and so forth, and knowing what's happened across our campus and coming from an experience of we often have more square footage than we need. Let's be careful, not that that's the case here, but the college I came from had gone through a process of planning to reduce 1 million square feet across our campuses across the state, in realizing that any new space you put in adds operational costs. And so my challenge to the team, and they were already headed there, was how do we accomplish what we need to do programmatically that allows for us to continue to grow programs, to meet demand, both from a workforce standpoint, but also from a transfer standpoint, and to ensure that our laboratories were on par with what's expected at our four-year partners, that adding additional buildings was not in our plan and didn't make sense for us to do.
And there's no disputing that this is an expedited project, but we really are trying to do that under the charge that we received from this board months ago, where while we have a reduced footprint on campus, let's get as much done. And so that's really kind of part of this, is it's within policy, but it's a little different practice than we've done historically, and it's with that reason in mind.
I appreciate that. And Dr. Cook asked some of the questions I had about programming the new space and making sure we're on top of that. I guess my I don't want to say final, but only question for now is the facilities master plan had a capital campaign component. I think we were trying to raise roughly $15 million. I don't know that we quite got to that mark, but should I be expecting any sort of reinvigoration of that, and in particular with regard to these enhanced costs? And are there opportunities to fundraise around the state-of-the-art science building like this?
I don't know that I'm the person to answer the fundraising opportunity costs. I will just say that when this conversation started, and this is in previous conversations with the board, what we said is the intent was probably to use money from reserves for this project.
Having said that, I believe that roughly $16 million has been raised for projects as part of the fundraising process.
Right.
But the facilities master plan.
Part of the facility master plan, not for this project. I will say, though, I have started having conversations with our foundation team about creative ways that we can provide for ongoing costs related to the building. That it's way too premature for me to say anything publicly about it, but there's a balance here between how we go about funding it. And so we will certainly be exploring additional philanthropic support as a piece of the puzzle, but the predominant plan was indeed to use reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here a minute, because I think the capital the fundraising portion of the facilities master plan was always understood to be we hope to do this and we think we can do this. And I think it was actually more like 25 million by the time we had it plugged in, knowing that if we didn't get that, it was going to come out of reserves. And I don't think we got to where we wanted to get to because of a couple larger donors we thought would be more receptive to this. I guess my question is kind of overall, the 10% contingency in a guaranteed maximum price contract. Somebody's going to have to explain to me the incentives if we set a budget.
Oh, and I should be clear. What we're asking for the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, is a $34.3 million. That's it. That's all. That is what McCown Gordon. That's what we're going to hold them accountable for. We're asking for $44.1 million, or $44.15 million for the total budget, but the component-related construction and what we're holding them accountable for is $34.33 million.
Then what would the other $7 million potentially be made up of?
So the portion that's related to the contingency, that what we call owner's contingency, that is for the college. So in our infinite wisdom, we have done a great job working with our partners of getting the requirements of what we need. We've gone through a rigorous process to get to this point, but inevitably in construction projects, things arise. And do we have a way to cover that should something change? That's the primary component related to the owner's contingency. The remainder is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And Chair Musil, that is all the things that Mickey talked about with respect to what we're doing in the classroom and that technology. Furniture, that's 100% of what that is. And the other is what we have to pay for our professional services that are being provided.
But those last components are all included in the 34.3?
No. Okay. The 34.3 is only the actual physical construction cost.
Okay, I got you. So what is the number that you are asking us to approve tonight?
Yes, that's a great question. $44,150,000.
So
Of which.
the GMP,
Yes, sir, of which $34,330,000 is the guaranteed maximum price that we're holding McCown Gordon accountable to as they manage this project.
how is staff going to deal, so we've got another $10 million on top of construction GMP,
Yes, sir.
and that includes the $4 million contingency?
Yes, sir.
So 40% of the additional cost is in a contingency fund, right? I mean, so I think what I'd like to know, is that right, roughly? $10 million and $4 million of it's contingency. What is the process for your informing this board and getting our support to spend out of that contingency fund? Because we always use 10%, and I remember a couple of years, 4 or 5 years ago, doing a study, and we didn't ever spend that. We authorize it and allocate it as a budget authority so you can go do your job. But this is a big number, so help me with that.
It's a great question. We plan to come back with frequent meetings to the point that Trustee Snyder made with updates quarterly as we're going through the process. My desire would be, Chair Musil, for us not to spend the contingency. It is there solely for us when we run across issues that were unanticipated. As we run across those, it's certainly fair that we come back to the board and apprise you of that. We've come across something that we didn't anticipate, that's of material nature, that will require us to continue to spend out of the total approval, but it's made up of the contingency. So that is something we can do.
Given the scope of this and the consultants we have, I would hope that at the end of the day, most of that $4 million is still in our reserves. I guess you've consulted with faculty over and over again. We've figured out the programs. We've figured the new programs that are cutting edge, as Dr. McLeod mentioned. And so I just think it is important that we be very careful with that contingency amount. And I'm not saying I would never approve a penny of it, because I'm not smart enough to say that, and it would be dumb to say it right now. But I think this is a big jump. One of the things I would say is we need to programmatically make sure we fill these labs. And I'm not just looking at you three, Dr. McLeod or Dr. Weber, and students.
I'll actually do you one better.
Okay.
While we are down overall, science, while everything else happened in the pandemic, was up 2%. Science has not, while we were hurt in math and English and a number of other places, for whatever reason, demand for the science program actually went up, and we had more enrollment in those laboratory sciences. Maybe it was people more interested in either healthcare, pre-healthcare, or working in the sciences because of all the conversation about COVID, but we actually have had higher interest in the sciences during this whole thing.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mickey. And we have something to sell now. I mean, and the extra square footage to me is you do not renovate space to a 1970s standard on square footage per student. So I understand that, and I understand once you got into it, you realize you had to expand the building on 2 floors, and that's a big chunk of this. What amount of the additional square footage is eaten up by that building expansion as opposed to the swing space where we will have temporary labs? Okay, is that a reasonable question?
Yeah, so there's about 26,000 additional square footage, 20 or so. The swing space is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 13,000. CLB is about 9. The science building is about 3.
Okay. So the new square footage is going to be the building expansion out to the edge of the building on 2 floors. And the other square footage is existing space that's going to be new space for a new use once the swing labs are out of there.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Trustee Smith-Everett?
Thank you.
Did you raise your hand? I'm
I did,
sorry.
yes.
Okay.
I got several, but so did, are you?
Go ahead.
Sure. So as I mentioned previously to this board, my husband is the director of a local biopharmaceutical lab. Just 3 years ago, went through, $44 million renovation. We, at the same time, we, in one of our sabbatical presentations, we were presented with a professor who had done a sabbatical on the biotech program and had gone out to the field and had learned basically what the most up-to-date.
Very dry climate.
It is very dry, it's true, yes, it's very hot. Who had gone out into the field and who had looked at what our workforce was demanding of incoming students. That has really stuck with me, particularly because my husband is very interested in capturing our students from that program and wants to know when he can get them, because one of the biggest things coming out right now for their lab, so they do that analysis after drug trials. So somebody goes in, for a weekend and gets their blood drawn 6 times. So his work does the analysis of that blood work. And instrumentation is a huge component of what is required for new hires. They will hire them with virtually no experience, but they must have instrumentation know-how at even a minimal level. So my question is, when we were talking about the space, and I see that the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, we've got a $2.8 million accommodation for that now that we didn't have in 2017. What kind of instrumentation is that including? Is that including instrumentation that is just for one kind of degree, multiple degree, or
That is
programs?
for multiple degrees.
Okay.
You're talking about, as I mentioned, virtual dissection as part of this, but also centrifugal pieces, physical sciences work, all of the lab spaces that are designed for our students who are going to be working in undergraduate research are tied to projects that started as of 2018-19, where we're doing things like hard science, looking for in dirt samples in the state of Kansas, antibodies, or just being able to centrifuge out and distill down pieces for us to look for antigens for different diseases. So we are talking about
Mass
physical science,
spectrometers.
mass spectra, which we actually have one.
Okay.
And we'll have more. So what we're talking about is not simply biological, but biological and physical sciences all the way around.
Okay, so it's going to accommodate for equipment for all those different programs, because those are feeders to then some of our other like healthcare programs that, NPR just had this week that interest in the health sciences is nationally seeing a big boost. So I guess instruments are expensive. So is this initial cost for purchasing this? Is this for replacing, or is this for expanding something that we don't have now?
This is both expansion of things that we don't have and updating of those that have failed over the years. We are going to continue to utilize those pieces of equipment that are still functional and current. But this is all of the new pieces and replacement of things that have failed over the last few years that we have not taken the opportunity to replace or utilized replacement costs, because we knew, A, that this project was coming, but also B, that we had to design spaces to keep those pieces in. So we didn't want to buy things and then leave them in the box to molder for 2 or 3 years. And we wanted to figure out first how we would use them, where we would place them, and then purchase things so that when they are put in place, they're immediately in use, so that we don't have age set in before we actually get full usage out of the equipment.
Okay. So that's my first question. My next question might go back to our partners who are going to be seeking the trades for this. So HVAC is a big component. I know you both spoke about a little bit about that, but the HVAC, because it has to be done separately from the rest of the HVAC system in a building, is really cost heavy. Again, just from personal experience knowing this, but I wanted to know if you, I guess, it seemed like we're asking for HVAC trades that are going to be able to do HVAC that is for moving those fumes, those toxic, I can't think of my words tonight, but things out of the lab so that it doesn't get recycled back in, but at the same time doing sustainability measures. Do we have partners that and trades that are familiar with that have done that we know we're going to be getting, basically, long story short, are we going to be getting a quality building that can do all these things? Are there really partners that have done all these things that we're not going to be spending money and then we got to go back in 2 years and do $2 more million worth of HVAC because it actually didn't work like it was supposed to?
Chris, you want to take a shot at that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so let me first say that is a priority to PJV, and not to speak for Matt, but for McCowan Gordon. We know those folks well enough. PJV and McCowan have worked on labs together. We have an extensive history of working together. PJV has designed LEED Platinum labs in the past, which is no small task whatsoever. So we feel like we have a combined expertise between design and construction to achieve all those things that you just described. Get you good air quality, which represents safety for students and faculty, but do it in a way that conserves energy to the best extent that contemporary equipment allows us to do that.
I would just add to that too real quick. When we did the RFP recommendations and approval to select both PJV and McCowan Gordon for this project, it was their direct specific experience with science lab projects that drew us to them as partners as well.
I feel like I roughly
we weren't going into
remember.
blind partners.
Okay.
It was you remember our selection team saying they greatly appreciated these partners' previous work in this effort.
Thank you, I appreciate that. From a sustainability point, I wanted to know if anything will be reused. So I hear some of our instrumentation will be reused. Do we have opportunities where we're not just tossing everything out and starting new, or is that part of this?
Our sustainability team does not know how to let a project happen on this campus without running in and seeing what they can save. So I'm confident that they will jump in and see what they can do.
Fantastic. I heard about sustainable new builds, but I just wanted to make sure we are capturing some things we don't need to toss out. My last question is maybe just more for the board. Do we have a policy on union labor used? Is that something we've ever considered?
For the record, I didn't ask that.
I don't.
Noted.
We do not have a policy on it that I'm aware of. I know that in other projects there have been, I know J.E. Dunn has done a lot of projects and they have contractual provisions within their own selections, but we have used bidding processes to get the best deal we can for the taxpayers, I think, which certainly doesn't exclude union trades.
That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Trustee Cross.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for your work on this project that began under the previous administration. I have to say I can't help but agree in virtually everything that's been said by my fellow trustees. I do think it's somewhat awkward. I've sat on this board for 8 years, and I don't remember some of this detail, and certainly all the figures here. And frankly, the whole thing reminds me of a story about a young State Senator Obama when he first started to run for the U.S. Senate, and he had a controversial issue put in front of him, and I think it was the Tribune or somebody's in his office asking him questions about this controversial issue, and he looked right at the reporter and he said, "Now, you know I can't give you my thoughts on that." Out of respect to this board and this administration, I'm not going to do anything but make these comments here tonight and say that, frankly, this Street Smart Lawyer and board noticed the numbers and what went on here. I'm not remotely sure it's McCowan Gordon's or anybody else involved's fault. I think there were some choices made here that are what they are. I do certainly appreciate the ever meaningful insight of Trustee Cook and Snyder and Musel and certainly the sustainability brought up by Trustee Smith Everett. I think I can certainly sell this, and at the risk of being a tax and spin liberal, it's a great opportunity for our students to study science. And I think it's a very pro K-State measure that you've all brought to us in science, and it's certainly a jobs project for the college and for the economy of Johnson County. And I'm not going to say anything else because I might.
I'm going to go to trustee Ingram, then we'll come back for a second round if there are other questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate the conversation. It's really hard to be the last person to ask some questions, but I think the one remaining question that I have not heard anybody talk about is, are there any enhancements at all that will affect our nursing programs?
All science program enhancements affect our nursing
Okay.
program. To be
And that
quite
makes
honest,
sense.
Because all of the prerequisites will be offered in these labs, so the expansion of all of the prerequisite coursework benefits these students. Now, there is a separate project that had been underway to expand the first floor usage in this building, which is not lab space, but is dedicated to the nursing program, as far as an expansion of rooms utilized for the students to debrief and deal with all of the simulation that occurs in the simulation hospital on that floor. And so that was a separate project that began work about a year ago to start working on some of those pieces. So that program has already started undergoing enhancements, and then everything that occurs in these programs will feed that program.
Okay.
And
And
that
that makes
project is actually being funded through fundraised dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
The nursing piece is all fundraised dollars at this point.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm going to go back to Dr. Cook, if anybody has a second round.
Yeah, I just have a comment, and I think I've always supported creative, visionary passion for new trends. I've challenged us that this college needs to reinvent itself, just as I believe all higher ed needs to reinvent itself. So I appreciate all the work that's been put into this, and I'll support this request. However, I will also say that I was on this board several years ago when we had a group of passionate administrators wanting to build a building in partnership with the Olathe Medical Center. I do believe we still call that, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, that's called OHEC, Olathe Health Education Center. And it's probably my own weakness, but I'm not convinced that we're utilizing that building the way the passion was presented several years ago and how it would grow our nursing program. So that's just a challenge to us. I'm going to support this project. I think it's great for students. I think it's good for the community and all our programs. I just hope that that the ultimate utilization will be fulfilled to your vision and your passion. Thank you.
Well, and in speaking to actually add a little cherry on top of the comments you just made, this year saw the first year that the LPN program is at max capacity in that building.
Thank you.
Because of that growth and our ability to utilize those labs, we have now hired the appropriate number of faculty to expand the LPN program to its max capacity and to more than double the number of folks that we've had pass through the CNA program in that building in this
Great.
last
I told you it was my ignorance that was the problem. Thank you very much.
Mike, I would take credit for all of the things Mickey just said. Your 6 weeks here. Trustee Snyder.
Thank you. So I have mentioned more than once about my concern about our robust reserves. So I've got no problem spending this extra money out of reserves. But I did want to ask the question, have we evaluated bonding given the attractive markets right now? And has someone done an analysis? And I don't think with this motion, we're dictating how we would pay for this necessarily, but just wanted to make sure someone's evaluated that. And it doesn't need to be now, it can be at a future meeting update. Doesn't even need, you can just email me and the board is fine.
Thank you, Trustee Snyder.
Trustee Cross.
Dr. McLeod, my mother's a graduate of that program, and we're going to lift people out of poverty that helped us. So just lift people out of poverty is all you have to say. Just lift people out.
Well, and I'll tell you, the next phase of that is going to be to connect to our services in adult basic education, and we're working on bringing in second language learners and the technology and assistance to help them matriculate their way into the CNA program and through LPN.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Trustee Smith Everett, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say,
Please.
one of the things that I also remember from a previous committee meeting, maybe the first time we were presented with this lab possibility expansion, was that we are actually, our labs are quite behind in comparison to our high school partners. And I know, I actually went after that meeting to Shawnee Mission to see the new lab, and it's night and day what we're offering. And so we were getting feedback from students that they were coming enrolled and pretty disappointed to find that the labs were substandard to what they previously had in high school. So my question is then this allows us to not just support the programming we have now, but expand it. And do you have an estimate of how much expansion we can get out of this with programmatically?
In terms of estimate, I believe we can add roughly about 10% in terms of students rotating through programmatically than what we have right now, because we are out of lab space during prime time on this campus at this point. One of the spaces that's actually going to be converted into a new lab is actually my office space, because we need the space for the students, and it's more important to have the classroom and lab space than it is for me to have a nice office where I can look out at the students playing volleyball. So we're converting that space to allow for that program growth and to meet the need that we have to be able to get the number of students who are interested into those classes during the times when they are wanting to enroll. We have pretty robust waiting lists in a lot of our lab classes, because you can only by design have so many students in a lab space based on OSHA requirements and safety. We're usually limited to fewer than 29 students. So sometimes we will have a larger lab section, which has to then is a split of a lecture section where we have to split the students in half because we don't have the space to actually have them in lab at the same time.
I'm going to get in trouble to help me. So in addition to that, you remember we are adding anatomy and physiology lab, which will allow us new enrollments in A&P that we were unable to have with just single lab. And the classroom that dental hygiene shared with it, Professor Slavin, what program was that?
Yeah, we were doing materials lab for dental hygiene, the grinding of tooth matter, and it was actually getting into the spectrometers and all of and destroying the actual machinery for some of our physics and pre-chemistry course. So it was getting a little hairy.
But they'll also have that dedicated lab that they can schedule all coursework. They don't have to split the lab.
Okay.
So the new A&P lab, physics having a dedicated lab, that will be space for new enrollments. A lot of the others are upgrades of classes, to be honest with you, that were already at max capacity.
What does A&P lead to?
Oh, wow. A&P leads to all of our
nursing, obviously
all of
nursing.
our nursing and health programs, as well as our physical training program on the professional health side of things. So most people don't know, we also do train people to become physical trainers as part of this. So it's not just hospital medical, it's also wellness in the community as part of this as well. And A&P also feeds that program.
Okay, thank you.
Question, one of the things that was so exciting to me about the Career Tech Ed building was the ability, the space we utilized or reserved for continuing ed. Is there a continuing ed opportunity with these new labs?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, continuing ed right now shares with us, and building these labs and helping us to be able to schedule, we will be able to more readily share the spaces that we share in Rainier Center with continuing ed. Particularly the biotech lab is one that we schedule and share together often, because a number of the continuing ed pieces for continuing certification are in the biotechnology field, and so the particular equipment for that exists in those labs and in one of the labs up in CLB. So we schedule those spaces fairly regularly together. The revamp of those, the floor space and lab stations in Rainier will also benefit CE, because they will be able to more readily deliver what they deliver in terms of after employment certification than we can do in those labs currently today.
I'll make a couple comments. As I said earlier, I think if you're going to renovate, you renovate to the space standards of today, and that made us, instead of building a building, expand a building, and that's more expensive than I think anybody anticipated in 2017. I'm also struck by when we did the facilities master plan, and the initial number thrown out was 105 or 110 million. I think it went to 115. When you renovate, you find things you didn't know, and when you study renovation, you find things you don't know. But there's also a danger of setting the budget either too high or too low when you're first throwing out a project. And it turns out 30 million was too low. If you throw it out at 45 back then, we would have gotten to 45, I'm pretty convinced. And you would have come in and said, we're under budget. So it's a little harder presentation for you all to come in and explain to us the programmatic changes and expansions. We know about the cost things. And I think the most important thing here may be that the speed aspect. I mean, 5 years versus 2 years of disruption. Students, the word gets around, and if we have multiple buildings torn up for 5 years, it would not be a good scene. And that's going to cost us more to have that swing space. So I'm going to throw out one other concept that, not to discuss tonight, but as I'm sitting here making my Post-it notes, we've talked about it before, and I don't know if anybody's doing it nationally, but I'd like to know more about differential tuition. We have programs that are very costly to teach and train students, that have a very high likelihood of getting career opportunities, and those are generally not our transfer, some of our basic education transfer courses. And we've talked about it before with respect to nursing, another very valuable degree that costs much more to teach because of the equipment. And so I don't know where that's going. I haven't read much about it in the last several years, but it's, is there any, are we going to increase fees for any of these? Has that been under discussion at all?
We've not taken that position historically. I will just say in conversations with a lot of different faces that were in this room years ago at this institution, we've taken pride. There are places that, rather than have a differentiated tuition, they have additional course fees. So they have course-specific related fees that has a couple different impacts. One is it makes it difficult for a student to know what an actual cost of attendance is going to be if they don't know what they're going to roll and they don't know what their cost is going to be. Secondly, the position we've taken as an institution, this was kind of my understanding coming in, and I embraced it very swiftly because I've come from institutions with course fees, and that was that many of our higher cost to deliver courses are the courses that probably our community is most interested in us teaching for trades and things like that. So those are the ones that are probably easiest to subsidize. And so with that flat rate, it's like, yeah, they cost more to deliver, but they're also ones that our community oftentimes are asking us to make sure that we're producing and putting out there. Now, that doesn't mean that philosophy can't change, but it was one that when I heard, I said, well, that's an easier one for me to embrace. So it's easier for the student coming in to know cost of attendance. It's an easier pill for the institution to swallow because those higher cost of delivery courses are the ones that tend to be our trades, our career, our healthcare. We all want qualified healthcare professionals as we age.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to your interest for another topic, but to bring us back on topic, I'm going to make this motion. It is the recommendation that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of College Administration to approve a total budget of $44,150,000 for the Science Labs remodel project with phased guarantee maximum price GMP proposals issued to the construction manager at risk not to exceed $34,330,000. The President or his designee will be authorized to execute any or all contracts against the budgeted amount of funds. If the proposed total exceeds the budgeted amounts of funds, the information will be presented to the Board of Trustees for their review and approval, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Cook and seconded by Trustee Cross to approve the recommendation. I just want to make sure that is the right number.
That was all the right numbers.
Okay, but I want to make sure within that, the GMP portion is the $34,330,000?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, because that's not in the motion, it's not in the recommendation.
It is.
It is. It's in there.
Specifically stated.
The blank, the version I have from our agenda has a blank in it, so that's...
You have an old version.
Yeah, we can get you that.
Okay, all right, well, I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. I support the motion, and thank you for calling the question in essence. Dr. Kirk, any other discussion? We've gone through this pretty much detail. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0. Thank you for your patience. Mike, well done. Thanks to Matt and Chris as well. And I did mean to mention that from the PGAV standpoint, I like the addition of something other than brick on the building to capture some of the more modern materials that we have started to incorporate into campus. So as a personal matter, I appreciate the look of the expansion on the building. Thank you for your time. The next item is the treasurer's report. Trustee Cross?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The President's recommendation for action, the treasurer's report can be found in the board packet. It is for the month ended April 30th, 2021, and some items of note include, at page 1 is the general post-secondary technical education fund summary. April was actually the 10th month of the college's 2020-21 fiscal year. The college's general fund unencumbered cash balance was $96 million as of April 30th, 2021. Expenditures in the primary operating funds are within the approved budgetary limits approved by the policies of this board, and it is therefore, Mr. Chair, the recommendation of the college administration that the Board of Trustees approve the treasurer's report for the month ended April 30th, 2021, subject to some audit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Cross motion and seconded by Trustee Ingram to approve the treasurer's report subject to audit. Any questions or discussion?
I do. I actually have a question.
Okay.
Never have a question for this part. Do you know why the PTE funds are significantly higher for projected 21, the green line on the page 19?
Let me pull it up.
Because it's going from, let's see, what I was looking at earlier.
That's basically the reserve chart, right, on page 19.
19?
Rachel, do you want to come to the podium? If
Well, wait, I can't even take a stab at it?
Oh, yeah, please. Please, stab away.
I was really testing. I was really
Stab
testing.
away, Trustee Cross.
Didn't want to put
official answer
Rachel
is
on the
I
spot.
Please go ahead.
You're asking about the green line?
Yes, on,
On the page 19, which is the cash and pooled investments?
yes.
So that is the fiscal 21 reserve line for the general and post-secondary tech education fund.
I thought it was, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I thought it was just the post-secondary education
No, it's
fund.
the general fund and PTE put together.
thank you.
Mhm. And the
Okay.
solid line is actual through April, and then the dotted line is the projection for May and June.
Just seemed like a significant jump, but
The reserve levels are
now that I
higher,
know it's
yeah.
combined. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Rachel Lears, our CFO, who knows every dollar that goes through the college.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just say thank you to Rachel Lears, who prepares those comments and makes me as an officer look better, and I thank her.
It's a tough job that somebody has to do it, right, Lee? Okay, we're getting a little giddy here. All those in favor of the motion to approve the treasurer's report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0. The next item is approval, consideration of the advisory committee approval for academic year 2021 through 2022.
Absolutely. And as you know, each year we bring before you a recommendation from college leadership and our programs across the college to be the members of our advisory committees in each of our programs. Those can be found in Supplement B, and that has identified the folks that would like to serve in this coming year. The committee's job is significantly to impact and guide us from a curricular standpoint to understand what's going on in each of the industries and fields that they serve, and to help make sure that we are well aware of where the job opportunities are immediate and long-term. And so if I could bring forward a recommendation for you to act on, it would be the recommendation of the college administration, the Board of Trustees approve the advisory committees contained in Supplement B from July 1, 2021 through June 30 of 2022.
Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Ingram, seconded by
I can second.
Trustee Smith Everett to approve the recommendation with respect to the advisory committees. I would note the Supplement B, I counted 50 separate advisory committees, I believe. It's an 89-page document. There are a lot of people and advises groups like automotive technology, dental hygiene, fashion merchandising, graphic design, plumbing technology, et cetera. So those are the programmatic and curricular advice that we get from the from the market, actually. So, Trustee Snyder.
Question, and I hesitate to even ask this question because I didn't advise Dr. Bound or anyone else before this, but last year or 2 years ago, this board had a lot of discussion about these committees and the notion that we need to make sure that we have appropriate diversity on these committees. I can't tell by looking at this whether that goal was achieved. I guess my question is more, did we put any kind of institutional changes in place as we ratify these committees for this particular year to look at it through that lens?
If I remember right, diversity was not only the traditional DEI stuff, but also rotating
Yes,
people.
it was rotating memberships.
So diversity in a very broad umbrella term.
Yes, and the short answer to that is yes. We've looked at both how we recruit, who we recruit, terms of service, as we've looked at having some folks who had served for a very long time. Could we start to rotate folks off every third year? So those sorts of things have been put in place, and each of the deans and directors who oversee the programs have been working to freshen up and revamp their committees in line with that work.
Thank you. And while you're, and that's sufficient for me, while you're up there, can you explain that there are some federal requirements that we have these? Can you just explain?
Not all of them, but yes, there are federal requirements, particularly for our career and tech ed pieces. The requirements for Perkins Grant funding, which is federal funding that flows through the state and to us through the auspices of the Board of Regents, requires that technical programs not only have a board, but that the board actually has an appropriate number both of faculty, students, and industry professionals, and that we meet on a regularly occurring schedule at least twice per year. So we tend to do one per semester. That way we do not bog down our industry professionals and expect them to be here more than twice a year. And that reporting actually goes through Dean Maupin's office to the state for our Perkins report each year. We have to catalog who came, what the substance of the meetings were. We have to provide all of our minutes as well as our lists to the state to maintain our Perkins funding. And we are in good standing and have been utilizing that funding pretty thoroughly for equipment as well as faculty enhancement. So we do training. When new things occur in the field, we pay for our faculty to go get the training, our machinists to go get new laser cutting lathe training, those sorts of things, so that they can teach those skills. And that all comes from that federal Perkins fund.
And does the meeting frequency, the minimum of 2 a year, is that kind of become the threshold for all of our advisory committees, or are they all?
It has become the threshold. We try to keep, it's easier for us to set one standard. So when we set the standard based on the federal guidelines, then we also maintain those for the programs that would like to have an advisory committee but are no longer required. Graphic design being a perfect example. Graphic design is no longer Perkins eligible. Some changes at the state level 3 years ago removed it from Perkins funding eligibility. I would still argue it is an appropriate career and tech ed field, but I've made that argument to the Board of Regents to try and keep that funding for them. But they have maintained their work of keeping that committee running, because a lot of the folks on that committee are also part of the employment base that comes looking for our students in that program. And it's one of the highest employability programs on this campus. We have over 90% of the students have job offers by the time they finish. And so we like to keep that connection because it allows us both to know what's on the minds of the businesses, to help us stay current, and to keep our students in a position to be employable and employed at the highest level possible.
Thank you.
Good questions, Paul. Thank you. Trustee Smith.
I have very similar sentiments. I appreciate Trustee Snyder starting us off because it was exactly matched with some of what I remember our previous conversations being. We had a different president at that time, and so I wanted to echo your sentiments, as well as make a charge to you and the team that we use these as an opportunity to diversify, make sure that it's representative of our community, make sure that we have, that this is a two-way conversation. I think when we discussed it before, we talked about, Dr. McLeod even mentioned some faculty who weren't quite sure how to utilize advisory boards without it sort of being just a presentation of here's all the great things we do, which is not necessarily what we want out of advisory boards for a community college. I particularly want to note that I also still see for the police academy, and I don't know the regulations around that, and I know there's rules and regulations, but it's all chiefs. And so, you know, I'm looking at that going, that's a pretty monolithic group. Does that give, especially around the changing in policing nationally? And you don't have to speak, Dr. McLeod.
I actually have an answer.
Okay. But just saying some of them are still the same as they were. And for me, that brings concerns that we're not really changing.
That particular group will not be changing. That is a state group that is required of us by the state. In terms of setting that. The police academy functions differently than most programs on this campus. It is run under the auspices of the State Police Academy in Lawrence, which responds to KBOR. And so those regulations, now there has been conversation about, because Trustee Musil actually asked this question of me a month ago maybe, and we were having a conversation about looking forward as we move to try and answer some of these questions and doing something that looks a little bit like Civilian Review Board looks for police and city policing, and to bring alongside our standing committee a separate committee that can do some of those things, because the makeup of that committee is designed around very specific regulation.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry you had to come back up again.
That's quite all right.
But
I get
also,
my steps in.
thank you for what I was going to ask, which is we think about some of those areas where we could expand. Maybe we've hit the minimum currently with what we have, but expanding it, particularly as our community is asking for more transparency with that. I also think it's an opportunity for us to plug in some of this with strategic plan going forward, that we utilize these committees to do what a community college has to do, and we've all said we need to do, which is sort of turn on a dime sometimes and really recognize that there are changes and we need to be ready to make those changes, that we are utilizing advisory boards to do that. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
I agree with all of that, and continuing ed feeds into that too, because those companies that need whatever, an HVAC person, they're coming back for some training and they can be on the advisory board and help us make sure that program's up to speed. Trustee Cross.
Yeah, besides wanting to thank Dr. McLeod for wearing Shawnee Mission North colors, I wanted to thank him for his time and then also share in the concerns here, just so there's a record.
Oh, yes, Elisa?
Very quickly. So most of our...
Oh, yeah.
Gotta do it.
Very brief.
Yeah.
Hello, Elisa Wallman. I'm the Dean and Interim Vice President of Continuing Education. I just wanted to follow up on what Chairman Musil said. So many of our continuing education program areas also attend those credit advisory boards. So they use that as an opportunity to learn what we need in the continuing education side. In addition, we participate in many boards and committees in the community, and we have ad hoc advisory committees. They're not as formal, but we take advantage of attending the advisory board committees that you're approving this evening, and use that for continuing education input as well.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Part of the reason I'm focusing a lot on continuing ed tonight, there was an article in our clips this week about kind of the future of higher education and community colleges, and it talked about transfer and it talked about trades, and it never mentioned continuing education. And I've been drilled into my head that's the third leg of our stool. That's the third thing we do for the community, and I think it all fits together if we make it fit together, and we do it intentionally, and I think we do that well here. So thank you, Lisa, for that. I think we're ready to vote on the advisory boards. All in favor say aye.
Yes.
Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0. We're ready for the staff salary recommendation.
All right, and I bring this to you with great recognition of the staff who keep this college moving forward. Certainly, last month at our special meeting, you approved the faculty contract, which represents a large portion of our employee base, but our staff do as well. And in recognition of their service to this college, to our students, to our community, and managing and helping us lead through and work through an incredibly challenging year, we as administration are bringing forth a recommendation for you. It is the recommendation of the college administration that to you, the Board of Trustees, that you authorize effective July 1, 2021, a 2.5% increase to our adjunct faculty salary scale. So we got to recognize our adjunct faculty, and a 2.5% salary increase for all non-bargaining unit salaried and full-time and part-time hourly employees employed as of June 30, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Cross, seconded by trustee Ingram to provide a 2.5% increase to adjunct faculty and all non-bargaining unit, easy for me to say, employees, full-time, part-time, and hourly. Any discussion? It follows our traditional method of matching our non-bargaining unit employees with the same compensation increase as our bargaining unit employees. So with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously 6-0. Dr. Bound, your monthly report.
All right, well, thank you very
We
much.
haven't been here
If we
quite
could
a
bring
month
up-
yet, but
We're getting close, so it feels. All right, if I could have PowerPoint come up.
Motion to adjourn.
I'm going to be quick, folks. You already heard from our student. I hope you found her as delightful as I do. We just have incredible students that we serve. When we look at summer enrollment, tomorrow is census date for us. Tomorrow night we'll take a census count. The reality is some are softer than I would have hoped for, that the team would have hoped for. The fair amount of the feedback we're receiving is fatigue around our online instruction.
Is this a decline from last summer?
It's a
or
decline
more?
from a year ago, that's correct. We were flat to up to flat last year. Anyways, our non-degree seeking, our guest students are down 14%. Our female students are down 11%, full-time are down 13%. If there's any good news in this not great news, there is no significant difference in the enrollment for our minority students and our white students. And so they're all roughly in that 9% range. If we've been talking about continuing ed tonight, I'll move quickly through this. As of yesterday, our summer enrollment for continuing ed is 76% over where we were at this point in time last summer, with a projection of enrollment around 5,000, or up 38% over last year's summer. Some of the big winners, if I can call them that, our motorcycle program's up 191 students over last year. CDL's 44 students over last year. Summer youth programs are up roughly 200 students over last year. Personal enrichment up 220. Professional education courses, 174 up over last year. And computer program up 113 over last year. So we're realize last year was a year we don't really want to talk about, right? It's got the big O asterisks on it. Having said that, we're moving in the right direction. Our continuing ed group is moving in the right direction. When I spoke to Elisa about this, she had recently, I think even the last couple days, attended Learn Conference. And we are recovering at a rate generally faster than our counterparts around the country. And so that is high recognition to our continuing ed group. So if there's a glimmer of brightness in this summer, from an enrollment standpoint, you just looked at it. If I would have showed you the fall enrollment as of yesterday, yesterday's report, I would have said that we were up 800% over last year. Lest you get too excited about that, we are up 151% over last year. What's critically important for us to look at in these charts is the trend line, right? And so you see the orange line, I think it's orange or red, about a third to half the way from the left into that's where we started enrollment last summer. So the difference that we're up so significantly over last year is because we didn't start enrollment cycle until about this time last summer. And so those lines are going to start to, as they do when you see out, 35 days out from the census date, you see a dip there. We're going to see a convergence. The good news is that we are, the trend line is similar, down a little bit, but similar to what we saw in 2019. So it is, comparing against 2020 doesn't do us much good at this point. And so the best comparison we have is against 2019. Okay. Let's see. In addition to that, then, I was asked to provide a quick update, and we're going to move through this very quickly. Dr. Leslie Harden is going to walk us through just a quick snapshot of, so that the broader community sees the faculty contract that we approved, as you've just approved other compensation adjustments. Dr. Harden?
Leslie Harden, Vice President for Human Resources. Just to give you a broad overview of what you all agreed to and approved for the master agreement for our faculty earlier this month was our compensation. We revamped their current salary plan from a 42-step program to a 25-level program. And that helps us reduce those equity gaps that we had that we found from our compensation study.
We should make clear that we all know this since we approved it. This is for the community.
That's correct.
That is correct. So then for 21-22, that's an increase to the salary table of 1.5% after moving faculty to the table. The next following year in 22-23, it'll be a salary table increase of 1.6%, and then we move those that had the biggest equity gaps, which are specialists and doctorate levels, they will go up a level. And then in 23 and 24, the salary table will be increased by 0.05%. And then everybody, 0.5%, sorry, and then everybody will go up one salary range. So that total increase for that year will be 2.75%. We also added tuition reimbursement. This was not previously in the master agreement for faculty. And this just mirrors the same benefit that we offer our staff. It provides faculty up to $1,000 per semester or $3,000 per year to obtain an additional degree or credit classes. We cleaned up some sabbatical language as well that just required them to do a presentation in a public forum. And that's kind of what they've already done, but this was just to get the language in the master agreement. And then one of the big conversations surrounded early retirement leave programs. And so what they did with that is we put in a clause in there that would give 12 months notice if we were to sunset any early retirement program. And then finally, some minor language just outlined specifically how an FA president could request additional release time, and that's through a written process. And then the other things that we did throughout the master agreement was general language cleanup, just cleaning up some things to clarify some language is all. So overall, we think it was a very successful negotiation period. We did get a 3-year contract, and we're very pleased with those results. Any questions?
I think we've all been through this. I don't want to say ad nauseum because it's important. It's an important thing to do.
Ad infinitum.
Ad infinitum. Is that good? Okay. We'll speak some Latin here. But I appreciate that summary because we haven't done that in the past. I think it's important when we're dealing with our 300 plus full-time faculty members in the Faculty Association, which is the union for the faculty that we present this. And what I think what's hard to do is people want to know what was the percentage increase this year? Well, there isn't one per faculty member. But as I understand it was about 2.6% for years 1 and 2 and 2.75 for year 3 in the total salary and benefit or total salary line item of the budget. And how that flows to individuals differs depending on whether you have your masterate or doctorate, how many years you've been here, where you are on the table.
That's correct.
Okay.
So as we're wrapping this up, I'd just like to, again, we talked about this when we were in special meeting, but again, I want to take the chance to recognize both of our negotiating teams from the faculty, Melanie Harvey, Dennis Arjo, Alicia Bredehoff, Dave Davis, Tanya Hughes, Eve Blowbaum, Brett Cooper, Rhonda Barlow, and Andrea Vo. And from an administration standpoint, Leslie Harden, Randy Weber, Gerbishan Sang, Leroy Cox, Melody Rail, Rachel Lears, Kelsey Nazar, and Colleen Chandler. I am incredibly thankful to this group that dedicated countless hours and then engaged you in countless hours of executive sessions in working through this. But a great gratitude to you in accepting and for the hard work that the team had done. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Bound. I want to make clear, when Dr. Bound says special meeting, it was a special meeting of the board, fully public, publicized, posted, and open to the public. But we did have the opportunity to approve that at a Saturday retreat with a special meeting being held.
Greg, I have a question for Dr. Bound.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, you closed that out. I thought you still had more slides. I have a question about fall enrollment.
Yes.
And the availability for in-person classes. I guess I'm getting increasingly concerned that as quickly as the community gets back to normal, that we're going to have students wanting to take in-person classes and not be able to because we've set this roughly 50% threshold or target, I guess. And so I guess I'm curious, how much flexibility do we have to meet demand should it be there?
I would love to say it's infinite flexibility, but that depends on how many people we have to actually be able to teach. That's literally our only cap. We have throughout the entire pandemic been able to, as needs arose and we fill classes, fill more classes until we run out of either full-time instructors who are max load and we have no adjuncts that we can turn to. So until we hit that cap, we have flexibility to continue to add courses as we've done throughout.
And then I believe the case was that we were planning certain class sizes for this year, and that kind of went into our general prescription that we'd have 50% in person. Are we going to be in a position to put more students in a classroom?
We already have.
Okay.
Based on...
Are we back to normal?
We're not fully back to normal. We still have slightly depressed caps so that there is still room for social distancing for students who might not yet be vaccinated or otherwise, but we are closer. We have tried to adjust from the 6 feet of distance to 3, which has allowed us to go almost back to full cap for most of our coursework, except for our largest courses.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Trustee Cross.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad for all this, and I appreciate it. I've said this, and I don't mean to be flippant or aloof about it, but I'm looking at a Brookings Institutions article from way back in December 2020, November 2nd, 2020, and it's talking about the alarming rise in for-profit enrollment, for-profit college enrollment. I know we're all aware of it, but I'm tired of getting creamed by it. And I know you know that, Dr. Bound. I'm not singling you out. I'm just saying, like, it's a very, when you look at these numbers, like, all the numbers were down or the numbers they're up.
Yeah.
It's kind of, like, I'm painting with a broad brush. I have that luxury, but I'm just saying, I know we're doing a lot. I know there's a lot out of the control of this professional staff and administration, but, I mean, on some level, that's on us. That's on the 7 of us. So I'm not necessarily upset with you. I wanted to say this and take this opportunity to say, like, could somebody please look into this?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
I think one thing that we've talked about is if the high schools start having college fairs this fall again, I don't know if they're planning that or not, in person as opposed to Zoom, that we will have a presence there, and I would encourage staff to include trustees. We have trustees here who graduated or teach in a particular high school that could probably go there. And I had breakfast yesterday morning with Solomon Webb, who's the president of the Black Student Union, and I told Solomon, you need to go to Olathe South because they're not going to listen to me, but they'll listen to you. So students but I think the trustees can demonstrate a commitment that will help our professional staff and in your area, Dr. Weber. But I also think faculty need to be part of that as well, so that they show up and tell students, I'm going to care about you. So I think it's always a good point to talk about increasing enrollment.
Certainly, our strategic enrollment team is hard at work, and it is a cross-pollination between faculty and staff and our continuing ed staff to make sure that we're all looking very strategically at at our enrollment practices, the way we go out and recruit. We certainly will talk a lot about our traditional age college students, but let's also look very heavily at our non-traditional college students, like you heard from tonight. That they need us as bad as anybody. And so, yes, sir.
I just can't help myself. I talked to a citizen of the Republic this week who had just gone back to school non-traditionally, and he was thrilled to tell me he went to Western Governors University. And he was proud of that. I mean, and they've marketed to these people that our thing is for you, right? And I've said it many times in these meetings, roll out of bed in your pajamas and go to school. But I don't know that it's that simple. I mean, there's clearly something that they're selling that we're not. And I hold myself accountable, and I know the rest of this board does too, and I know the commitment to public education in this room is strong. I'm not, Dr. Cook says all the time, I challenge us, I challenge you, and it was all the tact I could muster to that person to not ask, why didn't you go to JCCC or K-State? K-State's got tremendous online access, so. I just thought I'd lay that out.
Well, and that's why we set a goal for the college for this next year to grow enrollment by 1%. Okay, we just added to the lift to make that happen with summer being soft, and our challenge now is, and certainly we have contributing factors that can help with the growth and make college more affordable with the Kansas Promise Scholarship. But we've got lots of hard work ahead of us that includes both faculty and staff in recruiting, attracting, and retaining students. The best way to grow our enrollment is to increase the retention of students. And so it's a combination of attraction, retention. I'm starting to sound like an economic developer now. Attraction, retention, and growth. So we got work to do.
Okay, if that concludes your report, we're ready to move on to new business. The only item under new business I wanted to announce and then ask the board to authorize the creation of a new subcommittee on trustee orientation and policy. I've talked to both Trustee Ingram and Trustee Smith Everett to be on that. We last reviewed our policies during the year 2017. We adopted the revised policies January of 2018. We've really never had our trustees involved in orientation of new trustees, and Trustee Smith Everett has pointed out that her learning curve would have been a little flatter if she'd had a better orientation, maybe, and Dr. Bound has already proactively looked into this with other governing bodies around here when they bring a new member on. So the purpose is for the two of them to work with Dr. Bound and his team to figure out both reviewing any gaps in our college policies as they address the Board of Trustees, not overall, and then also to try to work on an orientation process, which I think is great timing because next January we know we're going to have two new trustees because of two of our current trustees that aren't running. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. So that's the purpose of that. I identified that to you, I think, in an email. But I would, given that our current policies say the chair of the board can create a new ad hoc committee with the consent of the board, is ask for a motion to approve this ad hoc subcommittee as described.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Cross and seconded by Trustee Cook. Any further discussion? Didn't see any negative heads. Okay.
There's no negativity around this, but I would also add that one of the reasons that I have talked to you about this very thing is also from KACCT, because we provide an orientation to incoming trustees all across the state. We did not do that due to COVID last year. We had the election in 2019, didn't get that done. And we need to look at what we're doing as well and how we can contribute to the individual institutions and support them so that they understand the work that is being done across the state. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, because you'd mentioned that to me before and I forgot it, so I appreciate that. We can mesh these together with KACCT. All right, all in favor of that subcommittee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously 6-0. We have no old business. The next item is our consent agenda, which is a group of items that are routine in nature, have been previously reviewed by the board at the committee of the whole, or recommended by professional staff. Those are listed as item Roman numeral 11 on your agenda. Is there anything anybody would like to take off the consent agenda? I did want to note that as you saw this morning, there was an amendment to the Human Resources report, as a couple names were inadvertently placed on there have been removed. So what is posted now on the website and what was published today is the accurate consent agenda. Although, if not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Ingram and seconded by Trustee Snyder to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0. We do have an executive session tonight because it's a board meeting, and we always have an executive session in a board meeting. I think I noted at our special meeting, I think we had probably 8 executive sessions with respect to the bargaining unit, and we have one tonight for an important personnel evaluation. So I am going to ask that we have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the individual to be discussed. No action will be taken. The executive session will last for 1 hour. Do we have a box of something to eat?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask that we start at 8:15, if that's okay. That we go till 9:15, so the executive session will start at 8:15. Open session resume in this room at 9:15 for anybody in person or Zoom. I'd like to invite Dr. Andy Bound and Kelsey Nazar to join this executive session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Ingram and seconded by Trustee Smith-Everett to move into executive session at 8:15 p.m. to reconvene here at 9:15 p.m. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. Motion carries 5-1 with Trustee Cross voting no.
You are trouble.
Yeah, you're right.
We will move to the
meeting in the Lytle, because we continue to broadcast by Zoom.
Good evening. It is about 9:19 now. We ended the executive session at 9:15 and have been waiting to get back on the live session. No action was taken in the executive session, but we are prepared for a motion, I think. Trustee Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the board renew the contract of Dr. Bound as president of Johnson County Community College for an additional 1-year term with the following adjustment to the current contract, that being a base salary increase of 2.5%, and that the chair of the Board of Trustees is authorized to execute a revised contract following review by the college's legal counsel.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Snyder and seconded by Trustee Ingram that we renew the contract, actually add a year to the rolling contract of Dr. Bound and increase his compensation, his salary by 2.5%. Is there any discussion?
Just that he's doing a great job.
Good job this year.
I look forward to many more years.
Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that the consensus of the board is that you've had an interesting, unique, successful, resilient year number 1. And we are as anxious as you are to get back to normal so we can figure out what year 2, 3, 4, and 5 looks like. So, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries 6-0. Dr. Bound, if you have any, would you like to make any comments as we recognize your achievements in year one?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to make a couple comments. First of all, thank you for your ongoing support. I came here looking for a challenge. We have that, but there's lots of opportunity here, and excited to think about the year ahead, the hard work. Frankly, there's going to be a lot of hard work ahead of us, certainly with us as president and board, but definitely from a faculty and staff standpoint. If we're going to serve our students well, to provide them with the opportunities that they come here seeking, we've got good hard work to do. And it's going to take a lot of commitment, a lot of drive, days when we're happy, days when we're not. But in the end, it will be best for our students and for our community. In addition to that, I'd like to thank the team, right? So I guess we talked about, I've had an okay year. It's because I have a fantastic team to work at across the college, dedicated individuals who come together to serve students and to serve each other, and I'm incredibly grateful for their hard work. There's a group that's often not recognized for their work, and I'm going to go out on a limb on one group, and that's my team in the President's office, the team that I'm blessed to work with. I appreciate the recognition that you gave Terry a couple months ago, but Caitlin and Shelby are two incredible additions to our team, and their work, everybody makes assumptions about what another department or another office does, whatever. I couldn't imagine coming to work every day without the great team I have around, and tonight I want to think particularly of Terry, Caitlin, and Shelby, and I appreciate your support and look forward to the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bound. I want to mention one group that we also don't mention enough, and that's your family, Ruth and Michael and Elizabeth, because when they moved here in July, I think it was about mid-July when they arrived, and you stayed in a hotel room for a couple of months before you got into your house, and they've not been able to get out in our community like we would have liked to, and we haven't gotten to know them the way we'd like to, and that's hard on a family. It's not something easy to come into this new job and then have your family in that situation. So I want to recognize them and thank them for letting us have you. And I think the board has challenged itself, and I think I would challenge the rest of the college community and the rest of the broader community to find ways to support Dr. Bound in the next year as we move forward coming out of COVID on all of our challenges, whether it's enrollment or DEI or budget, the Promise Scholarship or other things. And supporting you does not mean we don't disagree on occasion, but we all do it for the best interest of the college and for our students. So I'll take that as a personal challenge, and I hope the rest of the board will as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If there are no further comments, I'm ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Smith Everett and seconded by Trustee Cross. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you.